Even better, I'm a silverback! You know, because all of the dried semen stuck in my fur looks silver.
Hello, and welcome to the Kongversation! Adventure 2? No, this is just part 2 of our Diddy Kong Racing Spotlight episode, although you will hear things in reverse, per usual. I'm Hyle Russell. Did I say that? I might have said that. I'm saying it again. I'm Hyle Russell. Who are you?
Hi there, I'm Cameron.
Hi, Cameron. We're talking Diddy Kong Racing. And guess what? On this episode, we actually talk about the game. There's a game attached to all of this.
Oh, so this isn't just, you weren't forming a sentence. This isn't about Diddy Kong and Mario Kart.
No, I was not. Yeah. Although that's basically what the vast majority of Nintendo fans know of Diddy Kong and racing in this day and age. So hopefully we can help.
He hasn't been in any in a while.
Well, okay, maybe not this day and age, but back, several years on the Wii, that's what they knew. That and Funky Kong Racing. So we last left Diddy Kong Racing as I was getting ready to play the game with my good friend Elliot, my childhood chum. He was a bucket of ground-up fish parts. I haven't really revealed that about him, but he was definitely a bucket of chum, and he smelled terribly, which is why I had to end my friendship with him when I grew up. I actually just drifted away from him. I don't want anybody to get the impression that we had a tiff or anything. We just kind of drifted apart, especially when I started. I think I was doing Elvis and Slick Monty, and I just kind of lost track with him at that point. And last I heard, he has a kid and another kid on the way. But yeah, I don't know if he's going to hold to our childhood pact of naming all of his children after the Brothers Bear, but I'm hoping. I mean, it was a contract we wrote in blood, and I could sue him. I could totally sue him if I found out, he doesn't have a little Benny Bear on the way. But anyway, I digress.
Oh, come on, Benny's a common name. You gotta go with Bjorn. Not only will it be unique, the other kids won't know how to make fun of that name.
Or how to pronounce it, apparently. So, Diddy Kong Racing. We're going to be getting into everything about the game on this episode. Characters, plot, mechanics, the worlds, the legacy, I guess. So, let's start with the most important aspect of Diddy Kong Racing. And that is the Diddy laugh. So you turn the game on. I was going to say you load the game, but you didn't really load it back then. You booted it up. You just turned the console on, and then the game started. And the thing that was immediately apparent to me, well, one was the Diddy Kong Racing cartridge. Did it feel like lighter to you than Mario Kart? Or I remember it being like, one of the things I would always do was compare how heavy cartridges were to one another, and I don't know why I would do this, but for some reason it fascinated me.
Never perceived a difference with Diddy Kong Racing, though it wasn't really one that even crossed my mind with. I mean, there's obviously stuff like Bad Fur Day because the cart, it does hold more data, like that is on the heavier end, but
yeah, I remember just doing an informal weigh-in in my hands whenever I would pull out a new cartridge. Yeah, but I don't know. I was just trying to figure out is this game heftier than Mario Kart 64? And I remember being surprised it felt lighter to me. Maybe I'm misremembering that, and it's actually far bulkier than my brain is telling me. Let us know in a live stream chat. if Diddy Kong Racing was heavier.
Just like trying to consider that in like the kid logic of a heavier cartridge holds more stuff in it. Like the old commercial that they did when Pokemon was first brought to the West, with all of them getting crushed into a Game Boy.
Right. Well, I remember playing Pokemon back in the day and just like imagining when you're trading a Pokemon from one cartridge to another through the Game Link cable. I just like fantasized about the Pokemon actually going through the core, and it just not being a simple like data activization on the other cartridge. But I'll tell you what, if nobody in a live stream can tell us, I've got the games behind me up on my shelf, so when we hit a lull, when I'm playing a call or something later in the episode, I'll just go grab Mario Kart and Diddy Kong Racing, and we'll do a weigh-in right here. I don't actually have a scale because we don't own a scale, but I will hold them in my hand and we will see. So, turning the game on, oh my god, this is going to be a long episode, isn't it? Turning the game on, the thing that was immediately apparent was how much more for kids Diddy Kong Racing seemed in comparison to the Donkey Kong Country series. Because you turn it on and immediately you're greeted with the laughter. The infamous Diddy laugh. So let's talk about this, Cameron, the Diddy laugh. Because this is something that's kind of built notoriety over the last 20 years. So much so that it was actually featured in an article in Vanity Fair earlier this year. Of all things, Vanity Fair had an article on, and they called it the Diddy laugh. So, you want to get into some of this history, Cameron? I'll let you take the lead while I drink some Angry Orchard. Yes, Angry Orchard. The official, non-official, alcoholic, apple-based beverage for Diddy Kong Racing nostalgia.
Well, Hyle, these are your notes, and I cannot verify any of this, so burden of proof is on you, but I'll go ahead and read for you. So, history on the Diddy laugh. Apparently this was a soundbite Graham Norgate found on the request of Chris Stamper, who wanted the game to begin with the sound of children laughing to sell the idea that it was a family game. Now,
right, which...
Hyle,
That's kind of funny to me.
Does that mean Banjo-Kazooie was about, like, dragonflies banging into things?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess, like, conceptually, Chris Stamper just wanted to, like... I could see, like, the idea formulating in his head, like, I want this to be, like, a very, like, accessible game for families. But there's a problem with that, and that is... families would have probably already bought this game if they're hearing this laugh that kicks it off. Now, granted, there are rentals and everything that was prevalent back in the day.
Yeah,
we already went into the whole
unless it's playing on
a
kiosk on loop. This is kind of on the burden of the marketing team rather than the development team.
Well, and the thing is, a game starring cute jungle and woodland animals... wouldn't that be enough of a fucking hint that it was for, like, the whole family? So my only explanation for Chris Stamper's logic here is that Chris Stamper was actually a time-traveling cyborg from circa March 2001, and he saw this as the one and only chance to keep Diddy Kong Racing on store shelves in light of Conker's Bad Fur Day. No, we gotta make sure people know it's for kids, and that there's no... singing piles of defecate in this game. We gotta let people know that it's for the whole family. It's a little weird, and Rare's never had to do this before or after, so... nonetheless...
But, hey, you remember it, right? That's the important part.
Vanity Fair did an article on it this summer. Now, Norgate found it in the sound effects libraries of a company called Hollywood Edge, and... you know, in these days, Rare did utilize a lot of sound effect libraries. You know, today they have their own Foley stage. I think ever since building Manor Park, which is what they moved into in '99, I want to say. They have the whole sound wing at Rare. You know, Robin Beeland has his offices in there, but they have a sound recording studio, and they have a Foley stage. Like in Sea of Thieves, all of these sound effects are produced in-house. But back then, they didn't have really that option, so they had to go with sound effects libraries.
They had to at least be using them through Star Fox Adventures, because I know I can place some sound effects in that game and other stuff. And like one sound effect I really hear a lot is the dying gasp of the bugs in Jet Force Gemini. I feel like I hear that a lot in other things.
But yeah, so this was something they found, or Norgate found him specifically, in this sound effects library, in this package from Hollywood Edge. And, it had apparently been decades old. I was talking with Graham Norgate on Twitter about it several weeks back. Just, I don't even remember the genesis of this, but I think this was before we were doing any Diddy Kong Racing Anniversary stuff. And he made the remark that all those children are probably grandparents by now, to give you an idea of how old it actually is. But it had been used in things prior to Diddy Kong Racing, but after Diddy Kong Racing, which featured it right at the beginning of the game, it kind of gained notoriety from it. So people started noticing it a lot more. And so in the years since DKR, it's been notably found in the Disney film Mulan, the Simon Pegg, Nick Frost vehicle Hot Fuzz, the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock, The Walking Dead, which is just going off the internet. I actually can't attest to most of these. I don't watch The Walking Dead, so I can't even imagine the context for that one. I did hear it in a New Age CD that was playing in a store once. It was like a Curtain CD from the New Age label Sounds True, and in this track they were playing the Diddy laugh, and I was like, oh my god! And I even stopped and took a picture of it, put it on the Facebook page, because it was just such a like, oh my god, I can't believe I just heard the Diddy laugh in this store. And it's been in a lot of other things. So its prominence right at the start of what was the biggest video game for the holidays in '97 meant that, now and forever, people associate this sound effect, this common sound effect in Hollywood, with Diddy Kong Racing. And, it's like Star Wars popularized the Wilhelm scream. And Norgate gave us the Diddy laugh, and like I said, there was a blog that gave it the name the Diddy laugh, a blog by a man named Steve Paget, and then like I said earlier this year, it was in the Vanity Fair article of all fucking things. So
it was also in MacGuffin's Curse.
Oh yeah, the game developed by our own or DK Vine legacy staffer. Ozzy Ben Cosmina.
Comedy werewolf puzzle adventure.
There, yeah. There, it's been a while since I've heard that plug. So, nevertheless, the Diddy laugh has kind of developed a cult following all its own, but the outrageously cutesy identity of Diddy Kong Racing that Chris Stamper really wanted to drive home, that was so far abreast from what Donkey Kong Country was. Donkey Kong Country, it starred animals, some googly-eyed animals, but it always had that kind of faux cool 90s edge to it that kind of made it feel like it was for a slightly older audience than preschoolers, I guess. So
I mean, you had Donkey Kong dancing to dancing from a boombox right in the intro of the first one, and kicking his old man off of a girder.
Right, which is very 90s. It was like, fuck you, Grandpa. Nickelodeon's just for kids. You're not gonna get my Apple Jacks, Dad. They don't care they don't taste like apples. It was that
Honeycomb.
Kind of bullshit. I don't even know honey. But it was just that faux 90s, like, authoritarian, which in this case was your parents and adults.
You can't tell this Kong what to do.
Yeah. It's laughably dated, I guess. Maybe I'm just saying that as an adult. I don't want any children kind of rising up against me. But nonetheless, Donkey Kong Country had that to kind of set it apart, while Diddy Kong Racing kind of embraced almost a Disney Channel mind. I'm talking like early 90s Disney Channel. So that's a good comparison. Donkey Kong Country was 90s Nickelodeon. Diddy Kong Racing, at least on the outset, presented itself as the Disney Channel. And none of that mattered once you actually started to play the game. It was a little worrisome when you first booted up the game and you heard, you know, I can't even do the fucking laugh anymore. Not since my testicles dropped. But that all washed away once you got into the game, because besides the sound of children sometimes singing along with the overworld medley, that all kind of just faded into the background of the thematic whole of the game, which worked, which was kind of like this forest adventure set during the holidays that was full of magic and wonder.
Like a lot of things we talked about on the last episode, it feeds into the idea that the game was inspired by theme parks, I think.
Exactly. So even though your brain didn't know why it worked, it quickly calmed you down and said, okay, this works. So, you know, the fact that most of the cast, with the exception of Banjo, Crunch, TT, arguably Drumstick, they were all children or teenagers, and they were all voiced by children in real life, mostly the children of Rare employees.
That surprises me, because a lot of the Diddy Kong Racing cast does have like a deeply pitched voice, or always sounded to me like an adult affecting a kid's voice. I think the only one that, like I actually said, that definitely sounds like it's being played by a child was Timber.
Yeah, well, and maybe it's also, I'm thinking of the children like singing in the background of the melodies. I know they brought their own kids into it.
That
some form or fashion.
That sounds probable to me, because it's in time with the beat of the music in that instance. So it probably wasn't a stock library.
Right. But anyway, like I said, the holiday atmosphere all made it feel like it was part of this kid-friendly season. So even though I was a middle schooler who would ordinarily be concerned about being seen, you know, playing kid stuff, it didn't bother me. And honestly, I was too deep in Donkey Kong at that point. So if, you know, anybody called me infantile for playing this, I would punch them in the throat at that point. Like, Donkey Kong and Diddy, they were my boys, and nobody was going to come between me and them. Just last week, Cameron, I don't know if you knew this, but I gutted a man with a fish hook when I assumed he was snickering at me for covering Goldilocks and Little Bear on DK Vine. It happened. And, you know, we were just in a theater. We were watching Boo 2, a Medea Halloween. But, lesson learned. That's what I get for my insecurity still getting the best of me. So, we talked about sound effects a little bit. Why don't we go ahead and talk about the music of Diddy Kong Racing? David Wise, the maestro himself, the man who gave us a lot of Donkey Kong Country songs and pretty much all of Donkey Kong Country 2, was back for Diddy Kong Racing. This was kind of, in a weird way, this was Dave Wise's swan song for a while, at least in our neck of the woods, because he wouldn't really have another prominent game until Star Fox Adventures. It seemed like at this point, Grant Kirkhope took over everything, and Dave Wise was kind of...
There was definitely a period between 1999 and 2001 where I don't know how Kirkhope managed the workload he took on, because he did Donkey Kong 64, Banjo-Tooie, and Perfect Dark all within the same few years of each other.
Yeah.
And granted, a couple of those were taking on the workload from composers who suddenly couldn't finish. They were assigned to others, and Perfect Dark had some additional composition provided by Graham Norgate and David. I'm gonna murder his last name. Clinic.
We'll just call him Bjorn Bear.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go with David Clinic.
All right, fair enough.
Feel free to leave your angry, phonetically parsed comments on YouTube.
I imagine that what happened was Grant Kirkhope poisoned all of those composers and took over their projects, and then he siphoned the life energy from them. He sucked their plasma out through a straw, and he gained the strength of 3 composers, and he was able to handle all those games in such a short amount of time. But yeah, Dave Wise was everywhere up until Diddy Kong Racing, and then it felt like suddenly he was nowhere to be seen, and Grant Kirkhope was the man. And yeah, Dave Wise came back in great form in Star Fox Adventures. But let's talk about his Diddy Kong Racing work. Now, this is different than, I think, what's usually considered the David Wise style. You know, each rare composer, well, I would say Dave Wise, Grant Kirkhope, Eveline Fisher, those 3 in particular, they definitely have their own styles. Robin Beanland is kind of a musical chameleon, as I've said before, so I wouldn't really say he has his own style. He's kind of a jack of all trades. But Wise and Kirkhope and Fisher, but we'll just stick with the Wise and Kirkhope. They definitely are known for their own style.
I think some internet consensus is kind of tried to pigeonhole David Wise as the atmospheric composer.
I think we did that because when you look at his work on Donkey Kong Country and Star Fox Adventures, it's atmosphere,
Right,
so
and that's what those games call for.
Right, exactly.
But
this game proves
much
that
it always kind of comes off a little bit like how back when the Beatles were popular, people would pigeonhole Ringo's the funny one.
Right. Paul's the sweet, charming one who does the ballads, and John's the angry one who does the harder edge stuff, and George is the spiritual one. He's got a sitar, and it's and then you listen to their solo stuff, and you're like, oh no, they're actually listen to the White Album, and it's just like, oh no, they're actually all over the map, and we just tried to view things in stark black and white terms and pigeonhole people so that everything makes sense.
Because flexibility helps you actually maintain a career.
Right. But I mean, I think what makes Diddy Kong Racing so stark in comparison to Wise's other Donkey Kong Universe soundtracks, Donkey Kong in particular, is that it is a Diddy Kong game that sounds nothing like his Donkey Kong Country work, with maybe some 1 or 2 exceptions. This is less ambient, it's more upbeat, it's more driven, almost video game music.
I think Matt Corner once described this to me, and I think he nailed it. Diddy Kong Racing's music sounds like mainstream pop radio songs and I mean that in a good way, not
now. Do you mean
in some
mainstream
dismissive
in
hipster
1997? Mainstream 1997 pop radio, or just in a more universal sense?
I think in a more universal sense, and I realize I'm putting words in Matt Corner's mouth, so I apologize if I'm misspeaking, but I think that's why certain songs we've had in DK Vine circles have used Diddy Kong Racing tracks as a backbeat, because they're very reminiscent and very of those songs and easy to put a beat to, a lyrical beat.
What are some of your favorites from Diddy Kong Racing?
Let's see. I would normally have an answer ready to go for this, but now I have to think. Haunted Woods.
I don't have to think. For me, it's Hot Top Volcano. Hot Top Volcano.
The battle music.
Hot Top Volcano.
And I think it's Dark Moon Caverns. The song Volcano. That's also in the credits.
Hot Top Volcano.
And and Jungle Falls, and you know what? Just the whole damn thing is good.
Hot Top Volcano. That's my. I mean,
it's catchy.
It's the weirdest fucking track. And is it racist? I don't even know what it's supposed to be, but it's fun. It's. There's not a consensus for what they're actually saying in that track, but it's like this just vague, nondescript chanting, but it works. I don't know. All right, well, you'll be hearing the music of Diddy Kong Racing playing in the background throughout this episode. So, Cameron, let's talk about the story. Yes, a racing game with a story that we don't have to make up. What a notion. All right, I will read through this because why not? Yeah, so this is directly from the instruction manual from the game. It's a 2-page story. I just love the notion that they would expect kids to read this, but I did. I love reading through this stuff. This is not even like large print. It's not even like just a basic paragraph of, the characters got together and they raced. There is like lore in here.
It's also
it's
a little bit difficult to read because it's white text on a background that is a render of Wizpig's face.
Yeah,
just a wee bit difficult.
It's a render of Wizpig's face with like a starry background behind him. So
if you've seen the soundtrack cover, it's that render of him.
Yeah. So let me just pull up a PDF of the instruction manual so I can enlarge this. And my old elderly eyes just can't squint that hard. All right. The story. And some of this was translated in the Diddy Kong Racing DS version of the game. They play this out in cutscenes, but nothing can do it justice in my opinion. The brain.
That's kind of the best thing about this is, like I said last episode, this wasn't at a point in time where every game was expected to have an intro cutscene, right. And the depth of what this story gets into, like it's unlimited in scope because it's just a script.
Yes, and now granted, we do hold that Diddy Kong Racing DS is a canonically different second adventure, not Adventure 2, but a second adventure years later. Yes, I am including you in that, Cameron. Look, Tiny Kong is a teenager in that game. Okay, we're not going to get into it now.
Not now.
Save it for the spotlight for Diddy Kong Racing DS in 2027? Anyway, well. So, here's the story for the original, the best, Diddy Kong Racing N64. Diddy Kong sat on the porch of his treehouse and curiously tore open the letter. It wasn't often that a message arrived from so far away that it had to be brought in by carrier pigeon. Obviously, Diddy doesn't have one of the AOL free hours disc that were starting to become a common feature everywhere back in '97. So he doesn't have an email address yet. That would have made things so much more simpler.
We do, however, learn that he has his own treehouse.
I always took this as his parents' treehouse, like his family treehouse. Like he's still a kid, so he's probably living at home. But everything about his family is left super vague, as we're about to see. Eager to find out what it contained, he tugged out the note. Sounds wrong. Impatiently and started to read. This is Diddy and not Bumper, by the way. He tugged out the note impatiently and started to read. Dear Diddy, it began. Help! Dear Diddy, help. Now this sounds promising, he thought. He's a masochist. Things had been all too quiet since those old family friends, the Tigers, had arrived to spend their summer. And as it turned out, the message was from his old friend Timber, son of the Kong's guest, the Tigers. The young tiger had found himself in quite a bit of trouble that, for once, wasn't even his fault. After Diddy Kong carefully read the note through a couple more times, he sat back and gnawed on a finger, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond the early morning jungle mist. So there we have a canon reference that Diddy chews his nails. So as somebody who does do that, who picks at his nails in like a kind of anxious fugue states, I can appreciate that Diddy gnaws his fingernails down to the skin, well, to the nub.
He got a taste of Donkey Kong's at the end of DKC1, and now he can't stop.
He had the hunger after that. Probably why he had to switch to the prosthetic golfing fingers, so he could break the habit. He'd been asked to help, so his intention to zip off as soon as possible could not be in doubt. The question that preoccupied him now was whether or not he should draft some extra help, just in case. After all, this whiz-pig sounded like a pretty mean foe. Finally, he decided that his friends Banjo and Conker would still enjoy an adventure, even if it turned out that their services weren't needed. So, the young ape dug out a pencil stub from the mess of his bedroom and hopped back into his seat. He was sitting on the porch of his tree. Oh, he was sitting on... So, I was picturing the Diddy Kong Racing DS story where he's sitting on the edge of the porch, like with his legs dangling. But here he was sitting on a chair on the deck of his porch. These are the fine details I'm only realizing now.
Chairs need a lot of polygons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They just couldn't muster that kind of technology in 1997. Or maybe Cranky Kong had it in his contract that only he could have a chair. So he dug out a pencil stub from the mess of his bedroom and hopped back into his seat. Whistling for Squawks, his own makeshift carrier pigeon, he began to scribble out a couple of messages of his own. A few hours later, Diddy Kong was on the first leg of his journey, tearing off at high speed through the jungle.
There's something I have to point out here.
Yes.
Like, Diddy, did you not just get in a ton of trouble from leaving your girlfriend behind to go find the lost world? What are you doing?
Right. Well, I can understand, like, wanting to keep this a secret. Well, we'll get it. That comes up a little bit later in this story, so let me just table that for now. Not chair it, because we can't have any chairs. I'll table it.
Yeah, James Bond shot all the chairs.
I got that. So, alright. Tearing off at high speed through the jungle. A pair of Kremlin spies lurking behind a boulder watched him with suspicion. Hey, where do you think he'd go? Asked Crunch. His crony frowned. Why? He asked. What if he go fetch others? Fight Kremlins? The second Kremlin thought about this, and then realized what Crunch was about to suggest. No way. I not go, he said, and turned and bolted into the undergrowth. Crunch rolled his eyes. Hopeless, he snorted. I go after him. He bellowed to his cowardly colleague. You go tell boss. See what he think of that, huh? And with that, Crunch lumbered off through the trees, grumpily swatting aside vines as he went.
There's a few things to unpack there.
We'll save that. Let's wait to unpack until we get to the end, because
can I just point out something I didn't notice until just now?
Sure.
His crony frowned. I didn't realize that there was like a hierarchy between Crunch and this unnamed accomplice, I suppose. I just always figured they were kind of on the same rung of the ladder.
And yeah, that I think you could maybe read it both ways, that they mean crony literally, or they just mean crony as in he's clearly the subordinate. He's clearly the less go-to of the two. So I don't. You could read it both ways. I want to know more about this Kremling, quite honestly. This unnamed Kremling, this unnamed associate of Crunch. I want to catch up with him, but I think he's pretty far down on the list of Kremlings we need to catch up with at this point. So, all right. Meanwhile, Timber was trying to calm the excitable Pipsy so that he could understand at least part of what she was saying. He said he'd help us, she squealed, making Bumper and Tip-Top wince as the pitch of her voice soared in and out of audible range. Oh, okay, so let me adjust here. He said he wanted to find a champion to go after that horrible pig once and for all. No, I can't do it. I can't do it, Cameron. Like I said, maybe before my balls dropped, I could have done this, but this is just out of my range. I can't hit that level falsetto anymore. All right. Slow down, Pipsy, Timber urged, trying to make sense of her words without upsetting her. After all, this whole business had been harder on the little mouth than any of them. Whizpig's unwanted intrusion left her family homeless. What are you talking about? Bumper asked curiously.
Dark.
Yeah.
And it never comes up.
There's a lot of motivation for many of these characters. I'll just say that much. Taj, the genie, Pipsy babbled. Oh, there's a typo here. Did you notice that? Pipsy is spelled with 2 P's in the middle. Pippsy. Never noticed that typo before.
He took a whole letter from her, too?
He said he'd help. Really, Bumper, he did. I just saw him. Tip-Top blinked. The genie? But nobody's seen him for 50 years, he protested. Tip-Top is really nervous here. He's not like having a stroke, or it's not like the end of Donkey Kong Country 2 where the island's about to blow up. He's just nervous. I know, but I just did, I promise. Timber frowned, thinking this through. That means he must have been kicked out of the mountain too, he reasoned. After all, we've seen what that pig's spells can do. They all thought of the huge, leering whiz-pig face that had been carved into the mountainside overnight. Then they thought of the racecourses, the island's pride and joy, which had been magically sealed off. That made them think of Drumstick, their friend, and the island's champion racer, who had gone to challenge the intruder to an honorable race and hadn't been seen since. We could really do with Taj's help, Pipsy prompted. I know I have no consistent Pipsy voice here, but I'm at risk of just my voice going completely.
This is going to be a long episode. So.
Yeah. No argument there, agreed Tip-Top, nodding nervously. If you didn't get he was nervous before, there we go. Timber scratched his head. Well, I guess you're right, he sighed. Especially if we're going to get this mess sorted out before my parents get back. Well, if that genie wants a champion, I say we all get practicing, Timber grunted. Or Bumper grunted, excuse me. Well, if that genie wants a champion, I say we all get practicing, Bumper grunted, getting to his feet and snapping down his goggles. I have to say, that probably won't be the last time Bumper grunts before he gets to his feet. Good plan, Timber agreed. Come on, guys. Yeah, Tip-Top, even you piece of shit. Help should be on its way soon, but we can't just sit around waiting. Let's get out there and do what we can. And let's just hope that Diddy Kong doesn't mention any of this to my parents. I think that was in italics, so I think that was his internal monologue there. So that's the story of Diddy Kong Racing in a nutshell. The story kind of dances around this, but basically, an alien genie pigman named Whizpig comes down to Timber's Island, attacks it, takes it over, evicts animals out of the mountain, where he takes over as his makeshift headquarters, carves his face on the mountain, displaces Taj the genie from his lamp, and seals off the race courses. which are the island's primary mode of tourism and therefore the heart of its economy.
Now, what kind of egomaniacal jerk do you have to be to have your face carved into a mountain?
Really, I know, right? I know. I love how that's a common theme among both villains and heroes of the Donkey Kong universe. Everybody's got to have their fucking face carved on some goddamn mountain. What a story, Cameron. That's a story for a racing game right there. So let's dissect this a little bit. I realize we have a lot to talk about, but I mean, this is a racing adventure, so we would be at fault if we didn't really get into the meat of this thing. So I have a small nitpick to make, first of all, and I realize this is no fault of the game's actual story, but I think it wasn't forward-thinking enough to when the game was coming out and the impression the game would leave on many of the impressionable youth. And that is the reference to Timber's family visiting the Kongs during the summer. Now, this is just one of those, the instruction manual has to be wrong moments, like the Northern Hemisphere being to the south of Donkey Kong Island. I think everyone sort of just accepts that Diddy Kong Racing takes place in November or December, because it's basically a holiday game. And granted, that's mostly thanks to the second world in the game, but I just can't fathom Diddy Kong Racing taking place during the summertime. That's just weird to me.
Really? I've kind of, in terms of like, whenever video games have snow levels, unless they make it a plot point like Tropical Freeze did, I don't really ever associate that with informing the current climate. I always just took for granted that Snowflake Mountain is a place where it always snows, just like Crescent Island is always a sunny beach.
Well, and I think it's also when the game came out. I got this.
Oh, definitely. That's
weekend.
just.
I got this on Thanksgiving weekend, so it was kind of playing the Christmas and holiday themed world during the holiday season. Definitely left an impression, and I've said this before. Banjo-Kazooie Free ZZ Peak, I do not associate that with Christmas so much because I play Banjo-Kazooie in the summer.
I think it's one of those Occam's razor things we usually go with for DK Vine, is that games implicitly take place when they came out unless otherwise specified.
Right. I think the only time I broke that logic in my own brain was Tropical Freeze, because it shows Donkey Kong's birthday, which Mario Party 4 establishes taking place in the autumn. And Tropical Freeze does have an autumn-themed world, and Tropical Freeze was scheduled to come out in the autumn before it was delayed to February, so that's the one allowance I'll make. Plus, we all know that Donkey Kong was participating in the 2014 Olympics at the time Tropical Freeze came out. So
granted, I don't know geographically how that would influence the climate of Donkey Kong Island, but it's supposed to be this jarring thing that the island is suddenly covered in snow. And
right. And
doesn't really make...
Yeah.
Doesn't really have the weight that it would if it were winter in that game.
I've always placed Donkey Kong Island above the equator, ever so slightly, and of course, you know, at great altitudes on the island, it does snow, but anyway. So yeah, anyway, that's just a minor nitpick. One of those things that's kind of lost to time that, they originally intended this game to take place during the summer. Oh, fuck it. It takes whatever. So this lore of Timber's family knowing the Kongs, as they say. Now, it's kept ambiguous, purposely so, whether or not they mean the Kongs, as in Donkey, Cranky, Swanky, Wrinkly, Candy, and so on, or Diddy's actual birth parents. There's his genetic kin. Which was always my preferred take. I like this notion that Diddy's always unseen parents were friends with Timber's always unseen parents. And then there's this backstory that they were friends in their youth. When they were little toddlers, they were playing together. I don't know.
I think in my head I always kind of formed the picture that like the Kongs in particular they were interacting with were the like parental figures on the island itself. Like you'd have Diddy's parents, but you'd also have maybe Cranky and Donkey Kong in there. Like the grown-ups are talking, and that's why Diddy's not involved in whatever they're currently doing.
Right, and it's it's kind of layered into the whole like child-friendly theme of the game. We can't tell those shithead adults what we're up to. Don't tell mom the babysitter's dead. And there's no reason why Timber shouldn't let his family. Yeah. There's no reason why Timber has to keep this a secret from his family. I understand, like, oh, they put him in charge. Look, yeah, they put him in charge, but nobody thought an extraterrestrial space despot was going to come down from another galaxy and start wrecking shit up. Like, that's a pretty extreme scenario. So I wouldn't really put the blame on Timber here. So I can understand Timber's... Maybe it's a very childlike desire to, I've got to fix this. I've got to prove that I can be in charge, even when we get invaded by space aliens that are magical. I've got to prove I can handle this. So I can understand why he didn't want Diddy to tell the Kongs, be it his parents or Donkey or even his girlfriend Nixie.
It's mentioned earlier in the story, like it's implied that Timber's gotten in big trouble with his parents, like on a fairly regular basis. And I think this just may be one of those things, like he's a kid conditioned to think, oh man, I can't get in trouble this just one more time.
Which I really want some like Diddy Kong Racing prequels now, where we see how Timber became this so scarred and so afraid of upsetting his parents. Like, did Timber take his dad's Ferrari out of the garage, like a la Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and like did he wreck it or something? Like, what happened here to make Timber so afraid that he can't even tell his vacationing parents, who are laughing it up in the Congo jungle, that, oh yeah, there's goddamn Alf is here. He's a pig, and he's made poor Pipsy here homeless. Like, come on, Timber. Like, I think you're in the clear here. You're not going to get grounded for this. The only reason this might be Timber's fault is if I don't know, like he set off one of those model rockets that caught Wizpig's attention. Like Wizpig was just like flying by Earth, minding his own business, saw a model rocket fly off from Timber's island and thought, hey, this is a pretty advanced planet I'm passing. Maybe I should go check it out. I think I'm gonna take over this island. I don't. There's no, like, the plot is stupid. Let's just get this out in the open. The plot, upon close inspection, really doesn't make much sense. This whole, we got to face Wizpig. We got to face this alien, fascist who's also a pig genie, and we've got to do that by racing each other so we can prove ourselves worthy
each other
of
by the
facing.
way, that's
Yes.
another aspect of this. Like I think I kind of rationalized it as like, oh, this is something they don't really want to do, but the boss characters are enforcing it because they only want to race the best. But it seems like if they're working together, shouldn't they like just send one guy or girl and just have like just figure out who's the best racer and then just like throw the race for the rest of the game.
But I guess they have
put the
to
cars
figure out
in
who
park
is the...
halfway through lap 2 and
right.
let them go.
No, I guess part of it is they have to figure out who is the best racer, because in the game's lore that was Drumstick, and Drumstick already went to face Wizpig, and Drumstick vanished. So they're kind of left with like, well, we've got to figure out.
Right,
who
but I would hope
best.
after like 8 cups or so they'd figure that out.
Well, and also it might just be Wizpig toying with them. He seems pretty boastful. He seems like he's pretty like cocksure, and he seems like he's not really afraid of actually being beaten. So he's like, sure, whoever can beat me in a race, yeah, then I'll leave the island. You know, whatever. It's just video game logic.
It's like a reverse Space Jam.
Yes, that's another very popular entry from the mid to late 90s in our pop culture. Although I've never really understood the appeal of Space Jam, unless it's just the R. Kelly song. But the less said about R. Kelly in 2017, the better. R. Kelly is to Space Jam as Bumper is to Diddy Kong Racing, as far as who has disgraced themselves in that franchise's legacy. So, anyway, yeah, it's video game logic. It's stupid, but within the context of a video game, it makes enough sense. And let's be honest, it's pretty damn cool that this has a story and it has so much complicated lore that we just kind of struggle.
Oh, definitely.
Like, yeah,
it's
whatever.
The bits you kind of have to nod your head and move on are worth the fact that it has a story other than, hey, we're having a racing Grand Prix. You want to do it? I
mean, you could make this argument for any video game, especially of this ilk, like Banjo-Kazooie. Why is Grunty even allowing them to collect Jiggies? Why doesn't she just, I don't know, shoot Banjo and Kazooie? You know, like it's one of those things where, okay,
at some point you just have to accept, like, come on, because you wouldn't have a game to play.
Why does K. Rool basically allow the Kongs to progress so far in Donkey Kong 64 when he seems like he's in control of the entire situation? He's the one who stole the golden bananas. Why doesn't he just tell B. Locker, hey, stop accepting the golden bananas. We're not letting the Kongs in anymore. They're not getting to us. It's just
But General,
hubris.
what about a weapon? Why couldn't I bring my blaster?
Yeah. Let's just chalk it up to hubris. That can explain any gap in the logic of these video game plots. Squawks is in the story. Squawks does not appear in the original Diddy Kong Racing, but he's in the story. I love that the extent the people behind this game went to make it feel like it was part of the Donkey Kong Country world. And just having Squawks act as Diddy's carrier pigeon in the story just went so far in my young brain. I loved it. I was like, yes, this is perfect. This makes sense. This is really playing with the established world, and it's just creating like all of this warm and fuzzy feelings before I even started the game.
Yeah, that single line does a lot with a little.
Mm-hmm. We would actually see Squawks in Diddy Kong Racing DS in the cutscene too. But I love the thought of Squawks visiting Spiral Mountain and visiting Willow Woods, like trying to recruit Banjo and Conker. And speaking of Banjo and Conker, they're introduced here as people that Diddy already knows, which I thought this is kind of like.
That's one of the great questions. What context was this?
Well, this is like one of those classic hacky TV show tropes when they want to create a backdoor spin-off in an existing show. I think Married with Children did this quite a bit. It was like, oh, it's Al Bundy's old friend, Matt LeBlanc. Come on in here. You know, it's like, who's this guy? Oh, but he's an old friend of this main character. Okay, we accept him. I want to see more about this guy. I hope they make a spin-off. What? They've already planned a spin-off and it's already on the schedule. Okay. It usually never works in that context, but they did it here. Obviously, Banjo-Kazooie and Conker's Quest were already knee-deep in development. We went through that history last episode. So, introducing them here as old friends of Diddy Kong, sure. Why not? And in the character bios, it's elaborated on just a tiny bit more. So we'll get to that when we actually go through all the characters bit by bit. Crunch. Let's talk about Crunch and his crony, I guess. So in kind of layering this into the Donkey Kong world and creating the Donkey Kong universe as a result, having Crunch be a Kremling and not just an alligator went a long way. And this whole notion that Crunch is there as a Kremling spy to make sure that Diddy and the others aren't up to any nefarious anti-Kremling plots was fantastic. Why would Crunch be there? Why would a Kremling be there? It never makes sense in Mario Kart why Bowser and the others would participate in these races, other than we want to wipe that smug smirk off Mario's face. So we're going to compete in this open sports competition and prove that we're superior, and then just leave it at that. We're not going to try to like bash Mario's skull in with his baseball bat once we take the pennant. It always just feels slightly off. So having Crunch be there as a self-appointed spy, he's not there under like the goodness of his own heart, but that was just pitch perfect. That was, along with Squawks, that really kind of made me readily accept this weird new aspect to the Donkey Kong universe, because you had a Kremling there to spy on Diddy Kong, and Diddy didn't trust him, the others didn't trust him, but what were they going to do?
It's weird, you get this kind of, in doing and adding this backstory to him, and I love Crunch as a character, and this little backstory is pretty much why. It has the side effect of making this like a racing game that has implies a character arc. Yes. The character. A lot of characters have mild arcs, whether they be, Pipsy and her homelessness, Tip Top finding courage, and stuff that doesn't actually come up in the game. Crunch's arc is mildly resolved in the game. You see him in a brilliant way at the mid-game cutscene. He's dancing at the party with everybody else. That was actually the finale. That was the little final cutscene when they were doing the conga. Okay, we'll get into all of that, but I could swear he was in the middle cutscene anyway. There is a line here I want to call attention to before we move on. Sure. You go tell Boss. Yes. Boss, deliberately vague, and I think DK Vine's kind of has its own ideas about this, but I like how this is sort of, it's leaving the door open for whoever handles the next Donkey Kong game to do whatever they want, because you can't even say go tell K. Rool, because it was K. Rulenstein last game. What if they want to change his last name? What if whatever he's doing overrides what we just wrote? I know most fans who read this assumed it was K. Rool. I, of course, said it was Chaos, because there is no reason why Chaos would still not be the puppet ruler of the Kremlings. We last saw him in Donkey Kong Land 3, which was just, a month and a half prior to this. He was still active, so yeah, in my head this was Chaos, but you're right, they left it up in the air. I don't know if on purpose, but it worked, and it was enough to soothe my fan brain, who was unwilling to accept K. Rool was king again yet. So I love that. Something I recently brought up, I think, on the Facebook page, where I deliberately brought that up and called attention to it, saying, could have been Chaos, could have been K. Rool, or maybe they were leaving it up in the air in case, they went an entirely new direction with the next Donkey Kong game. And what I loved, he could have been talking about Tiki Tong this entire time. What I loved about Crunch and him being there as a spy too is it adds all of this Machiavellian motivations during the actual races of the game. So when let's say I'm playing as Diddy Kong and I pass Crunch, of course, in addition to me just having fun playing this racing game, I'm going to be thinking, fuck you, Crunch. I know you're here spying on me. I'm not having...
it adds all of these like character connections and rivalries and layers upon layers that are just there in the instruction manual. There's nothing in the game to suggest any of this. But, I mean, it's great. It really makes us feel like a fleshed out, vibrant world where different characters react to different characters in different ways. And it really builds attachment. Most of the characters in this game, including Banjo and Conker, are brand new in this game. Diddy is the only returning character who's actually physically in this game, and yet you feel like you know the cast by the time you boot this up, because you get their motivations, you get their personalities, you get how they interact with each other and how they relate to one another. This is masterful world building for a stupid game about furry animals driving go-karts. I'm not like... I realize Diddy Kong Racing is just a Mario Kart type game, but the small amount of effort that is put into these things is what makes it stand apart from its contemporaries and from the games that came after it. Even to this day, nobody's done it as good as Diddy Kong Racing, and that is phenomenal. So that's me gushing there. Thanks, Crunch. Finally, let's talk about Taj a little bit. Taj the Genie. Now, there are implications to Taj, and there is fanon to Taj that we've kind of projected onto him since the game came out and in the years since. He hasn't been seen for 50 years, according to the animals in the instruction manual, and that says to me that before Timber's family ran Timber's Island, which was named after Timber, this was Taj's island. And I think that's implied through various things in the game, including when you beat Wizpig, the mountain turns into Taj's golden face. I like to think this was Taj's island until he disappeared mysteriously 50 years prior to the events of the game. And then it somehow went to
he
the
introduces
Tiger family.
himself as the genie of the island, which
The genie
seems
of the island, yeah.
like very specific if there's not some sort of significance to that.
Now the question though is, what happened to Taj? What 50 years before Diddy Kong Racing, alright, well let's see, 50 minus 97, that would be 1947. Is there anything that supposedly happened in 1947 that could have tied into the game's plot? Oh, Roswell! So, this is just my fan conjecture. I don't even know if I subscribe to this theory, but I brought this up on the Facebook page a couple of weeks ago too. Is this Wizpig's first attempt at taking over the Earth? Or did Taj stave off a Wizpig invasion in 1947, which was the source of the Roswell conspiracy? Did, like, one of Wizpig's soldiers that we see in Future Funland, did they get their ship shot down and it landed in the deserts of New Mexico, and the U.S. government, like, confiscate these pig aliens? There's story to be told here, and the fact that Rare owns most of these characters, I want the story to be told. What really happened in Roswell? Have it involve Wizpig, have it involved pig aliens, and have it be that Taj, like Wizpig cast a spell on Taj, trapped him in a lamp, and then Taj was missing for 50 years until Wizpig came back and disturbed the lamp by accident when he took over the mountain.
So hey, this is how you make Perfect Dark, DKU.
Alright, let's actually talk about the characters. And in talking about the characters, we'll go over any lingering biographical details we haven't gotten to. We'll also get into how they play in the game. So, obviously the star is Diddy Kong. He is the Mario of the game. And his stats are that he's a middleweight, he's got medium acceleration, good handling, and medium top speed. And you have to love how in Diddy Kong Racing, Diddy is a middleweight. When he would eventually appear in Mario Kart, he would be a lightweight. But here, he's a middleweight.
I think they made him like whatever size system Mario Kart Wii used. I think it was like medium. Like they didn't have weight classes; they had like size classes, and he, I think, was medium.
I want to say in Double Dash, I don't think the sizes really applied too much, other than like what carts you could use.
It was what carts you could use. I think Diddy could ride pretty much anything.
Yeah, he was a lightweight then in Double Dash, but
because the barrel train was a lightweight only cart, and Donkey Kong couldn't ride it.
Right, which is why I never used it, because I had to pair Donkey and Diddy together any and all times. I of course beat Double Dash. I 100% completed it with nothing but Donkey and Diddy. So yeah, that was fun. Now Diddy's design in this game is kind of an in-game upgrade from where he was last seen in the SNES games. He finally has the stars on his shirt that we're seeing in renders since Donkey Kong Country 2. Although in this game, it's not really the pattern we're all familiar with this day. It's a lot more basic. They don't really display the stars in that consistent, like, large star and smaller star on the side in game. But he's also supposedly got the Nintendo hat on, but this a weird. I don't even know why this is, but the hat always appears kind of with a metallic sheen in this game. Cameron, do you have any knowledge? You're kind of the design expert on the staff. Do you know why this is the case?
I don't think so. I think it's just like some kind of like lighting effect that got a little bit overzealous, because off the top of my head, I don't think any other character is affected by this.
Yeah, I guess it's just they J.J. Abrams themselves, but solely on his hat.
Maybe they wanted to hide the fact that the N64 didn't have the textured depth to put the Nintendo logo on his hat. So it's just a lens flare in place of where that would be at all times to hide it.
Well, it's funny because it's not funny so much as sad and pathetic in my case, but I canonically hold this to be a metallic hat, Cameron. I say that Diddy does have this metallic hat. He only wore it in Diddy Kong Racing. Arguably, he wore it in Donkey Kong 64, but the funky hallway lighting in that game failed to display the radiance, the splendor of the metallic sheen on his hat. And then he eventually ditched it by the time of Toadstool Tour, when he just got a very standard flat red fabric. Maybe in lieu of Donald Trump kind of creating a stigma around the red baseball cap, he's got to bring the metallic hat back. It's the only way he can differentiate himself from the MAGA hats. So I vote for bringing the metallic hat back, Cameron.
You think maybe it was like actually metal, and it was like for head protection from all the missiles and things that get fired at him?
That would be cool. Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, I hadn't ever considered that, but in any light, Nintendo, I know you're listening. I know you're friends of the show. Reggie, I know you listen each and every week. Michael Kelbow, I know you're listening to this in a bubble bath with the candles lit, sipping some fine Pinot
Banana
Noir.
daiquiris.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, no, he dips the banana in the Pinot, which sounds like something Bumper would do. So, anyway, I know you guys are listening, so please bring back the metallic hat. I vote for the metallic hat in 2020, which is when I'm saying we'll get our next Donkey Kong Country game. So, anyway, Blue Eyes! Cameron, tell us about Diddy's Sinatra eyes.
Yeah, so starting with this game, yeah, Diddy has blue eyes in his official art and on the in-game model. We've talked a little bit about this.
Oddly
on his like in-game like mugshot profile shot that shows up in like battle mode.
That's true.
I think it may have been.
You're right.
Like a late a late in the game kind of thing, and it creates this weird sort of thing where the original Diddy Kong Racing has an image of him that doesn't have blue eyes, and in the DS version, he doesn't have blue eyes anymore, but there are still in-game textures that have it.
Yeah. I know this came up on the Diddy Kong character witness earlier this year, but for the benefit of those who didn't listen to that episode, why? Why did they give him blue eyes? It just seems like such a weird choice. And that obviously Nintendo didn't really care for it, because as soon as Rare was gone, they got rid of that. But why?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be just a... I mean, for one thing, I guess it brings him in line with most of the other characters. At least as far as the playable cast. But no, I think there's some that have beady little eyes too.
Of course, I've always explained the blue eyes as Diddy does have blue eyes, but only in certain lighting, particularly lighting that really shows off his metallic hat.
No, I'm wrong. I was thinking maybe Taj had little beady black eyes, but no, he has blue eyes, just like Diddy.
Yeah, it's just a weird choice, especially since Diddy's look was already so well defined, and he'd already been in these million-seller games that redefined the industry.
And he was apparently going to keep them, I think, moving forward, because Donkey Kong Racing, he has the blue eyes, but
and Diddy Kong Pilot as well. Yeah, they were really doubling down on the blue eyes, even when they were modifying Donkey Kong's design a little bit going forward in Donkey Kong Racing, but
it's
no.
I remember this being one of those things in the mid 2000s that I like how we all did when we were silly teenagers, righteous indignation, how dare you deviate from these character designs. But nowadays I'm kind of thinking, yeah, the blue eyes are just kind of alright. They don't, I don't dislike them, but I don't feel like they add a whole bunch to Diddy's design either, and I've kind of grown to say Smash Brothers giving him brown eyes. That color scheme's consistent. I guess one thing that I do kind of like that comes with the blue eyes, and I don't know which came first in this, but Diddy's signature colors in Diddy Kong Racing are blue and red. And I think this is another one of those things in other games, Diddy doesn't get to be the middle-of-the-road character. In other games, Diddy is not going to be associated with the colors red and blue. That's going to go to Mario or Toad.
That's true, yeah.
And I've always, that's one thing I've kind of lamented in games when Diddy appears in a huge cast that has color-coded vehicles, because he draws the short straw and gets stuck with usually an accent color of brown, which doesn't look terribly great most of the time.
The Kongs always get stuck with the colors of poop or pee, by virtue of the color of their fur or what they like to eat. But that's a good point. You think they just added the blue eyes to justify him having a blue cart? That makes weirdly a lot of sense.
What I'm also curious about is if Diddy wasn't originally in this game, somebody would have had to have a blue car originally, right? That's something that would have been in there.
Well, regardless, it's just in a weird design choice. I don't miss the blue eyes so much anymore, but I am fond of them because they are kind of obscure now, and they're of a very particular era of Rare's Donkey Kong tenure, namely the 5 years between Diddy Kong Racing and the buyout. So
yeah,
I'm fond of them, but I don't miss them.
Same, I'm fond of them, but they're not a hill I'm willing to die on. Dixie's knee pads, on the other hand, maybe.
Yeah, I think they're just look, between knee pads and a beret, too many Monica Lewinsky references. One of them's got to go. Because we got to move on from the late 90s. Unlike me, because I can still do the fucking hacky Jay Leno humor from here until the end of time, apparently. So Timber, let's talk about Timber. Also a middleweight, also medium acceleration, also good handling, also medium top speed. Why? He's virtually identical to Diddy Kong, and he's got a cap too. So
Gee, it almost sounds like he was going to be the main character.
a little bit, yeah. He's the second protagonist of the game, and he's Diddy, but a tiger. So you can see where this whole notion of them being childhood friends came from. He's also the character that much of the lore of the island revolves around, at least the immediate government and politics of the island revolve around him. Also, how narcissistic were his parents that they get control of this island and they name it after their child, apparently their firstborn. Like, okay, like maybe Timber's dad is named Timber, or maybe his mom, because I don't think Timber is really a gender-specific name, but so maybe it's like a Donkey Kong Island situation where it's actually named after the parent, but it's still plenty narcissistic. I mean, look, if I ever got
I live in a place
island,
called Maryland, so who am I to judge?
Also, why is there a Chevy Chase in Maryland? It's not named after Chevy Chase, surely, the actor.
Yeah, I don't know. I think after a couple seasons, they got rid of him.
Is this going to be a Community reference or an SNL reference?
Pick your poison.
Okay, because I was going to say they certainly didn't rename it to Bill Murray, Maryland. So
they didn't rename it to Keith David, Maryland either.
That was a Community reference?
Yeah.
I'm shamefully behind on Community. Like, I've never watched it. I only know, like, references to it, but I've never gotten into it. I need to give it a shot. But, anyway. I just got into The Good Place recently. That's actually a really good show. I don't know if you've seen that. But,
Season 1, yes, and I would recommend it.
It's a show that takes a while to build up. Like, I remember the first couple episodes.
I don't want to give any details on it. I think it's a show that's best gone into at knowing absolutely zero about it.
And give it a couple of episodes. You won't find it funny, and then you will, and then the humor kind of creeps up on you. And season 2 is phenomenal. It's even better. I'm not even gonna. No, I can't. So, anyway, so yes, I'm actually watching a new comedy, so I will have more references in the future. Other than I can't make Community references, I have to go back to the 70s for my SNL references. But I will modernize myself yet, Cameron. This is my pledge to the audience. I don't know why I'm talking like JFK. So Timber, regardless of why the island is named after him, because of his shithead parents. I have always wanted to see Rare do something with Timber, especially after the buyout, because he's essentially second Diddy. He's essentially Diddy, but we own him. So I was like...
Isn't Will Overton constantly pitching Timber's drug-fueled adventure on Twitter?
I would play the hell out of that game. I really wanted in the mid-2000s, the mid-aughts, or the mid-noughties, the mid-very noughties, the mid-really noughties, or mildly noughties if you prefer. I really wanted Rare to do just a 2D Donkey Kong Country style game, especially I think after Jungle Beat, when it felt like we weren't going to get a new Donkey Kong Country style game, but just starring Timber. Like, yeah, just do ACM graphics, just go fucking nuts, just give us Timber Country. I don't care anymore. And I still would really want that, honestly. Alright, Pipsy. She's a lightweight. She's got high acceleration. She's got excellent handling. And she's got medium top speed, which I wrote in our show notes accidentally as medium top seed, which again would be bumper. Formerly Astro Mouse, a Timbers Island resident who, as has been mentioned, she got evicted from her mountain home, her and her family, by the villainous Whizpig. Now, I don't have a whole lot to talk about with Pipsy. She's kind of a character who's always just there for me. Like, I don't dislike Pipsy, but she's... I've never really gotten a good sense of her character other than she's the girl, which is always a bad sign. I think knowing that there was originally a character called Astro Mouse.
I think her character in my mind is like solely associated with nearly running Tip Top down in the intro.
Yeah. Like Dixie, I know her character front and back. Shut up, perverts. What I mean is, I feel like her character is very, very
you
fleshed
do have
out.
strong
Shut
opinions
up,
on where her
perverts.
tail is.
That is true. Pipsy, though, I think as far as the Diddy Kong Racing cast, and yeah, some of it is she was never spun off. She never appeared as a supporting character in another game. Yada yada yada. So it's harder to know her, and she's never had like off-screen lore expanded
on the
upon,
bright
like
side.
Bumper
She didn't
has.
go down the dark path that Bumper did.
Yes.
Of anybody in Diddy Kong Racing who we have to worry about, I feel like Pipsy would be the one who's made it out all right.
Right, and I remember when I was kind of more of a shithead in my early 20s, and I wanted in a future Conquer game Pipsy to appear as a supporting character, a la Tip Top in Banjo, and like oh, let's make her a prostitute. And I was like, no, what was wrong with me back? No, don't.
No.
Bumper is obviously the character you want as a Conquer supporting character, but. Now, Pipsy, after learning that she was originally Astro Mouse, well, there was a male protagonist named Astro Mouse that was later tweaked by Kev Bayless into Pipsy. But I think we've all kind of agreed, like, we'd be okay if Pipsy took up an interest in like, spacefaring, and like she became like an astronaut or something. Maybe like after the adventure of Diddy Kong Racing, she developed a healthy fascination with space.
Hey,
And I would like to see her become Astro Mouse.
I mean, she was homeless at the beginning of the game, and WizPig just left this massive planet behind. That's so. Yeah, I'm gonna let this inform Pipsy from now going forward.
Yeah. I would be fine with Pipsy like sitting on that golden throne in future Funland, just like laughing hysterically. So WizPig's claiming of the mountain, and it's not really inferred, but I always took it to mean that he possibly destroyed many of the homes in the mountain or on the mountain. That kind of provides a nifty fan explanation for us on why so many anthropomorphic animals of a non-primate, bear, or Kremlin nature started appearing in the DK series following this game. Obviously, Donkey Kong 64 had a bunch of them, and it's continued, to this day with Retro's Donkey Kong games. I'm thinking like the Oinks. So, Timbers Island refugees, those who left Timbers Island following WizPig's destruction, the desolation of WizPig, it kind of became a catch-all DK Vine explanation, although one not as well known as something like holograms or prosthetic golfing fingers. But I like the notion of Timbers Island refugees. There's a whole trail of tears from Timbers Island. Sadly, a timely reference, given our president. So let's talk about another Timbers Island refugee, or at least one we know left the island shortly after Diddy Kong Racing. Tip Top. He's a lightweight, high acceleration.
I thought you were just
handling.
That was so abrupt. I thought you were like commenting on his drinking ability or something.
Excellent handling, medium tops. I said seed again. Top speed. I'm really building up the bumper here. So, Tip Top is established in the story as a Timbers Island native, and part of this this group of animal friends that include Timber and Pipsy and Bumper. Now, he's kind of a nervous Nelly, if you would. which is lost in his Banjo-Kazooie appearances. Maybe he did find courage at the end of this game, but he's
Well, he has a really timid mumble in like Banjo-Tooie, I think.
Yeah. Now, granted, he did start reproducing like a madman shortly after this game. Like, there's a whole storyline to be had, like following like Tip Top at the end of Diddy Kong Racing. I'm thinking it's like one of those like skeevy 80s college movies where like the nerd character gets laid at the end of the movie and he's like, he's got like girlfriends on both arms and he's just like, yeah. And I'm thinking that's what happened with Tip Top, and that's how he had dozens of children by the time of Banjo-Tooie 3 years later. Now, granted, turtles, lay a bunch of eggs, so he was able to get it all done in couple swoops there, but now as far as the history of Tip Top goes, am I wrong? Because I've heard different things over the years. Was he a character that was developed by the Banjo team originally, like started showing up in Dream, that the Diddy Kong Racing team then borrowed for their own use?
See, I have no idea, because unlike Banjo and Conquer, Tip Top and Diddy Kong Racing doesn't really look anything like the Banjo-Kazooie character, even though they have the same name.
I've heard a couple of different theories over the years. One, that the Diddy Kong Racing team used the turtle from Dream, or some iteration of Dream, into Banjo-Kazooie for their turtle character. Like, they borrowed the name Tip Top. Or the Banjo-Kazooie team took the name Tip Top for a turtle character they had in their game and decided to help, fluff the lore a little bit and say, oh, okay, this is Tip Top from Diddy Kong Racing. We'll pay it forward a little bit.
You're just look, it's a good name. We got to keep using it.
Let's just make this a character. Whatever the case, Tip Top did go on to become a supporting character in Banjo-Kazooie. A very minor supporting character. He's not like on par with Mumbo. He wasn't even a playable character in Banjo Pilot, which I never understood the rationale behind. He made a cameo in Banjo Pilot on a racetrack, but you would think they would just make Tip Top a racing character in Banjo Pilot.
I would go to him before I would go to Jolly or the Jinjo.
Look, don't get me wrong, I love that Jolly Roger is playable in the game.
Oh, me too. It's one of those things that's like unpredictable enough that you appreciate it.
The only thing I can think of, the reason Tip Top wasn't playable, was that Diddy Kong Racing DS was already like being bandied about at the time, and they knew if they put Tip Top in that game, they may not be able to put him in Diddy Kong Racing DS. So it's kind of a pick and choose type thing. I don't know.
Yeah, like if you make this character inexorably linked to a potential Xbox mascot, then it creates a conflict of interest.
There was a lot of surprise, though, when Tip Top came back in Diddy Kong Racing DS. And because I know a lot of us assumed, well, they're going to cut Banjo, they're going to cut Conquer, they're going to cut Tip Top, because Tip Top is part of that Banjo family now. And he was there. He was there in Diddy Kong Racing DS. So
must have hurt Tip Top's feelings that he got to go through, because he's just such a B-lister.
Tip Top's had more success than a lot of these people. His voice also sounded sort of like Pee Wee Herman, at the very least when he screamed. And this was something early DK Line loved to point out, but nobody really agreed with us. I still stand by it. He sounds like Pee Wee Herman.
Some of his vocal runs do.
Yeah. But speaking of public masturbation, Bumper! Yay! So Bumper is a badger. He is a middleweight, medium acceleration, good handling, I'll say, and medium top speed. Nice and slow. His character is that he's actually, among the main cast of non-unlockable characters, he is actually a racer. Like, that's who he is. He loves the thrill of speed. He's got the racing goggles, he's got the helmet, he's got the driving gloves. Like, he is all about driving and visceral thrill, I'll say. And he's also, like, his age is not really established in the game, but I've always assumed he was the oldest of the Timbers Island friends. Discounting Drumstick, who always seemed like he was just his own guy, who was just like a legend, a local legend. But he always came across as he was at least in his late teens. He wasn't like a kid like the others. And I mean, how did you perceive Bumper back then?
I'd say older than Timber and Pipsy, definitely.
Yeah.
Maybe about the same age as Banjo, or a little bit younger.
Yeah. Banjo's definitely, I think in this game, supposed to be in his early 20s, and Banjo-Kazooie. And I would say Bumper is either that or slightly beneath it. So, look, I beat around the bush. I'll say enough. Let's talk about why we always make these jokes about Bumper.
Yeah, please explain.
There is a reason. We're not just being crude for the sake of it. So, okay, this all goes to Lila Loveday is mostly to blame. Okay, but Conker is to blame as well. So when I said when I was young, dumb, and full of seed, I wanted Pipsy to be a supporting character in Conker. You know, really pervert her up. You know, I realize that's stupid and idiotic, but the Conker franchise did get its mitts on one character. So at the time of Live and Reloaded's release, there was a lot of supplementary material that was released during that time. There was, of course, the Conker mockumentary that was released as a bonus disc for the Xbox if you reserved the game. That's how Ryan Stiles became a DK Vine Hall of Famer. And we hold that to be completely canon, 100%, inarguable. Conker did stand up with Ryan Stiles in America before 9/11. And
he has an avatar on our forum.
He has an avatar. What more do you need? He has an avatar on our forum. That is legit. Ryan Stiles is a very important Donkey Kong character. Much more important than anything in Super Mario Odyssey. I'm giving the finger to you all right. You can't see it. Maybe can you hear my finger? Can you hear my middle finger through the microphone? I'm wagging it at you. Yeah. So Conker gave this I think this was only in a text interview that was released. I don't even remember where this was released. It was online somewhere, but Conker gave this text interview about his own history at the time of Live and Reloaded, because they were kind of reintroducing Conker to the Xbox crowd, which, let's be honest, at that time, what consisted of dude bros for the most part, frat guys, and Rare fans who felt really out of place owning an Xbox. And Conker, he mentioned his first appearance was in Diddy Kong Racing. And that's the great thing about Diddy Kong Racing. Rare can reference it. Rare owns most everything in Diddy Kong Racing, and they can bring up the name of the game. Even though Nintendo owns the name Diddy Kong Racing, they can say, hey, we made Diddy Kong Racing. Like, that's part of our history. And Conker, the character, can say, yeah, I made my debut in Diddy Kong Racing. This is something that continues to this day. When Rare Replay came out, they had all of those videos that they did for Rare Replay and for supplementary YouTube material, and they brought up Diddy Kong Racing. But Conker offhandedly and derisively said that, you know, he doesn't really talk with those weirdos from Diddy Kong Racing anymore. And in fact, he even heard that one of them was in jail. Yeah, it was kind of a ha-ha moment, you know, kind of, oh, that's funny, you know, that this cutesy game that Conker made his debut in.
But of course, we're DK Vine, so that raised the question, which one of them was in prison?
And I don't even remember who raised this question on Scribes, which was the Rare letter column that Lee Loveday, you know, famously ran for so many years.
I don't even think anybody directly asked the question. I think Lee just offhandedly said in another answer, like, explaining what happened to the Diddy Kong Racing cast, except for Bumper, who's in jail.
Yeah, I don't know if somebody like wrote in and said, hey, Conker mentioned one of the Diddy Kong racers was in jail. who was it, and Lee said Bumper, or if it just came up naturally through some other means. But regardless of the fact, Lee Loveday, word of God, Bumper was the one who was suddenly in jail. So suddenly that gave great weight to this Conker interview. And then so we ran. It was like, okay, so Bumper is in jail.
And then the question becomes, why is he in jail?
Why is he in jail?
Which I think Lee also weighed in on later on, sort of.
I don't remember how this came about, but I know it was brought up at some point, and it relates to the character animations on the player select screen of Diddy Kong Racing. So it doesn't even look like he's masturbating. It really does. It's a stretch, I'll say, but it's just kind of him slapping his ass. That's kind of what it looks like. He's just like smacking his own backside or side. But if you squint, if you look really hard, it looks mildly lewd. Like Bumper's going to town on himself. Bumper's bumping one off. So, ergo, okay, well, how does somebody get arrested masturbating? Public masturbation. And then, like, the fleshed out, so to speak, story of Bumper, I think, pleasuring himself in a movie theater, I think was just informed by Pee Wee Herman, Paul Rubens, and that infamous early 90s story. Again, I make dated, hacky references all the damn time, so get used to it, new listeners.
Okay, I think I've found Lee's explanation if you want me to just read this.
Yeah, please.
No, because somebody asked him, like, were you teasing something when you made this comment? No tease, it just sounded funny. Part of the legacy of Edge cover star Bumper is his unusual bottom-slapping jig on Diddy Kong Racing's player select screen. And it's probably safer to say Bumper's in jail than Jago is in a mental hospital, or Lupus killed some swans and had to be euthanized. Simply because Bumper is so far down the list of old rare characters in with a chance of a spectacular comeback. Not that we don't love the furry maniac.
So, okay, there we go. So that is why Bumper, the filthy public masturbator, the exhibitionist, that's where that came from. So it's canon. I mean, it's as canon as it's gonna get, and we hold to it. Like, yeah, absolutely. Now the question is, though,
I mean, Lee has a point.
Bumper
it's not going to get
prison?
contradicted anytime soon, is it?
No, it's not. And the fact that we are the only people who give a damn about Bumper anymore means it's definitely never going to go away. Like, we're not going to let this die. But that raises the question. So Bumper went to jail. He was in jail at the time of Live and Reloaded. What's he up to today? And believe it or not, Lee Loveday just brought this up on Twitter a week or two back. Cameron, why don't you read the quote?
Yeah, so context of this, in light of Diddy Kong Racing's anniversary, I believe somebody reached out on Twitter and asked, is Bumper still in jail?
I think it was a DK Viner, right? It had to be a DK Viner. So, or somebody in the community.
This is the response from Lee. I reckon he's out by now, but prevented from securing gainful employment by the specter of his misdeeds. So even as we speak, he's knocking back cheap bourbon in a dirty bedsit. Hashtag happy thoughts. Hashtag Xmas.
And I still, if I ever get a chance to influence a Conker game, I think I brought this up before. I want Bumper in the game. It can be like a Dirty Dozen scenario where they storm the gates of hell. Because I have this idea of like Dante's Inferno, but of Conker. And I would like characters to go with them. So in addition to Greg the Grim Reaper, I want Bumper to be their baby driver. Sorry, no Kevin Spacey references intended. I want Bumper to be the driver who maybe is on work release, and that's why he has... I don't know. But, yeah, Bumper would be perfect for the Conker universe. So Bumper, in my mind at least, Bumper is the tip-top of the Conquer series. So that's the history of Bumper, the sordid, dirty history, the post Diddy Kong Racing history of Bumper. I love how so many Rare characters fall on hard times. Like, Rare characters seem to age, if not in real time,
even the ones who still
pretty close
get
to
new
it.
games. Like, Banjo is historically, like, misfortune prone.
Yeah. I mean, Banjo gained a ton of weight, and that was a decade ago too. Like he worked it off, of course, you know, during the game's like training sequence. But
well,
yeah, I love.
I'm hoping with how long they were sat in front of their Xboxes, you know, you had like an exercise regimen at Connect Sports.
That's
like,
true.
After nuts and bolts.
Yeah, the
Rivals
people who
will
work
keep you going.
The people who work for Rare are in a lot better shape than the characters from Rare. It's just humorous to me. All right, let's go to Crunch. We've already talked about Crunch quite a bit, so there's not much more to say. He's a heavyweight, low acceleration, difficult handling, high top speed. You know, he's essentially... I kind of just realized this. I might have realized it in the past, but I thought about this when compiling notes. He essentially has Donkey Kong stats from a Mario Kart game, but he's ironically a Kremling. So that's kind of cool.
So I'm curious, Hyle, this may just be my own experience. Was Crunch extremely hard to use in this game? At least in a car. He's a little bit better, I think, in a plane or in a hovercraft, which is like another neat little element to this game, but I always had so much trouble if I ever put him in a car.
You know, it's funny to me because it's all a matter of perspective. In a Mario Kart game, I'm used to controlling Donkey Kong. So, to me, a Mario Kart game would naturally play heavier and a little bit slower, at least at first. Maybe higher top speeds, but that's the way a Mario Kart game plays because I'm used to playing as Donkey Kong. Diddy Kong Racing, I'm not used to playing as the heavyweights. So Crunch did not seem natural. So I don't know if it's just a matter of that perspective or if Crunch really was difficult to control. But yeah, I was never overtly fond of playing as Crunch.
I do have like one little anecdote about Crunch that I'd like to share there because we didn't get into it with the manual.
Sure.
So in addition to the manual, one of the other neat little ways that promotional material conveyed character back in the day was there was an official Diddy Kong Racing website hosted by Nintendo of America, and they had like various guide-like sections to the game, and some of them were narrated by the characters. And Crunch narrated the section that went over the items in the game, and the section was called, I think, Crunch's Dirty Tricks. And like this
would have been more applicable for Bumper, but okay.
But yeah, this was another one of those bits that really contextualized the character in a way that the game itself could not. Because Crunch's section of the game a section of the website was basically him like sort of doing like a review of all of the items and what you could use them for. Like, I remember like something distinctly that he really did not like the magnet item. Because like he said it was wimpy because you have to be in a place other than first place to even use it.
I didn't like the magnet item, honestly. I'm with you, Crunch. I'm with you.
And there was another weird thing about this that kind of goes along with the manual. It seems like every time Crunch speaks in something via text, they always do something different with his accent. The manual gave him like kind of caveman speak. Or like he talks kind of like how the Sharpclaw do in Star Fox Adventures, like dropping every other word.
Which makes sense considering this is the team that would go on to do Star Fox Adventures for the most part.
And then in the DS version, he has snake talk. He really accentuates his S's.
Which is similar to the Kremlings as seen in some other Donkey Kong games, like I'm thinking Donkey Kong Country GBA.
And, but on this website, he's kind of... It's hard to read tone and text. Like, there's no, like, weird grammatical thing about this. Mm-hmm. But it always kind of struck me as he's talking like a stereotypical old film gangster, kind of, like, or like a Joe Pesci type. Like, what's it to
right.
ya? Sort of. Like, he has an attitude. And, another thing I remember from this site is... And, just look this up on Web Archive when you're done. You'll get a kick out of it. It becomes apparent reading the other characters sections on this website. Nobody is buying that Crunch is there with good intentions. Right.
And we mentioned he's kind of got a story arc, which is weird for a racing game, but so awesome. And, he starts the game as a Kremlin spy. Nobody trusts him, and he doesn't trust them. But the cool thing is, as shown in the end game, like, cinemas, he does get swept up in this adventure, and he eventually, like, rallies to their cause, and he wants to take down Wizpig as much as anybody else, and on top of everything else, he kind of befriends them. Like, they all kind of are in the trenches together, even if that trench is a 3-lap go-kart track. And so by the end of it, he's their buddy Crunch, and he's kind of no longer there to spy on them. He's just one of the gang. I love that, and I love Crunch, and I want to see Crunch back. I feel like one of the greatest missed opportunities, and we can't even really blame the buyout for this, because the Diddy Kong pilot team just kept, like, changing the nature of that game in weird ways. For more on that, see our abortion clinic episode for Diddy Kong Pilot several months back. But at one point, Crunch was going to be in the game, and that was just such a fist-pumping, in-the-air moment. Yes, Crunch! Crunch, I mean, he's a fan favorite, and in this day and age when, it's a long shot that we'll even see the Kremlings back in the game, we're not, like, we don't have any hopes that we'll see Crunch or Clubba or any of these other
one
Kremlings,
of these,
but...
like, catch-22s, like, he has a story arc, but it's one that's very hard to pay forward in anything else.
Right, the only way you could do it is if he is a Kong spy within the Kremlin ranks or something, and how many times are you going to be able to use that in a game? I mean,
you're not going to be able to make that a plot point in a Donkey Kong platformer. It would have to... The most you could do is if he's in another racing game, and he could have been in Donkey Kong Barrel Blast, and I really wish he was.
Especially since Nintendo owns him. He is one of 2 Diddy Kong... Well, arguably 3, but at least on the surface, 2 Diddy Kong Racing characters that Nintendo owns. And it's a shame that they don't seem to realize it or care, or think that anybody would care if he was brought back. Well, I care. I care, Nintendo. I know Cameron cares. I know a lot of people listening to this care. It's Crunch. Alright. Banjo! Heavyweight, low acceleration, good handling, high top speed. I'm Banjo! I actually talk in this game. Gah! And we know what he sounds like because of Diddy Kong Racing. So, the instruction manual makes clear that this is before his partnership with Kazooie begins. And a lot of people, I see this on, like, fan wikis too. Well, we don't know if Kazooie's in his backpack or not in Diddy Kong Racing. We do know, because in the instruction manual he says he threw some things in his backpack and left. Kazooie's not in there. I would argue this is before he even knows Kazooie.
That's the implication I took from it, because, I mean, if he doesn't have a partnership with Kazooie yet, but he knows her, what is even going on?
Right.
So, this brings up a question. I kind of... You compared Crunch to Donkey Kong. I kind of felt like Banjo controlled the closest to Donkey Kong in practice to me in this game.
Yeah, maybe. Probably. I guess Banjo had better handling than Crunch.
I feel like he's like Crunch is the extreme, and Banjo is kind of tapered off a little bit from that in a more manageable way.
I mean, I don't know like how the heavyweights are really supposed to like compare in my Mario Kart game. I think Donkey Kong is usually considered the heavyweight that's easier to control. I don't know if there's much fundamental difference between, say, DK, Wario, and Bowser.
I think at least in Super Circuit they had it where he and Wario were the more manageable ones, and Bowser was the extreme like 5-star weight character, and I think DK and Wario were 4.
So maybe Crunch is comparable to Bowser in this game. Okay, well, and maybe they're not maybe there's no comparison at all. Maybe we're just grasping at straws. But yeah,
but both into like punk rock fashion.
True. But I like Banjo. I like him in this game. I like that we are introduced to Banjo before Kazooie. It's just kind of a slow burn. If it was Banjo and Kazooie together, it would seem like a bit much. If they were like racing like they are in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing with Banjo-Kazooie, I think it would be too much. But I just like that, okay, here's one half.
You'd also
of this
probably have the game
duo
running at like 5 frames a second if you put a whole nother character model in there.
Well, that's true too. But you know, it's nice that it's like, okay, here's half of this duo. You'll get the other half soon, but here you go. And I like the Chris Sutherland voice system here. And we know what, like I said, we know what his voice sounds like fully because of Diddy Kong Racing, and that helps infer the character noises for him in Banjo-Kazooie, and then we can infer other characters' voices based on their own warbles in Banjo-Kazooie. So, a lot is accomplished here with Banjo being in this game. Conker. He's a middleweight, despite being a squirrel, which is weird, but I guess when the comparison is a mouse, sure, middleweight. Medium acceleration, good handling, medium top speed. So in his little character blurb under the characters in the instruction manual, it says he's a friend made by Diddy when he and Donkey Kong were on an adventure. The implication is they were exploring Willow Woods, Conker's home, apparently, and they just met this squirrel. They met this happy-go-lucky squirrel.
I just had this
fella.
A mental image in my head of Diddy and DK looking at acorn people and just being speechless.
I would hope they would have done like the research. Like it's like going to Canada and being shocked you see a Mountie. You know, it's like okay. I was kind of expecting this. Or like going to like Hollywood and seeing a Baldwin brother. It's like, whoa, what's Billy Baldwin doing over there? Well, I am in Hollywood. You know, come on, Donkey and Diddy, like brace yourself for this kind of shit. But yeah, I like. For me, I don't like the idea that Donkey and Diddy were having all these unseen adventures because I want to see all their adventures. I don't want them to have like full-fledged adventures, but I'm fine with them exploring the rare archipelago in their free time.
They have a life outside
like
of you, Hyle.
Bite your tongue. They jump. I know. I say jump, and they ask how high. Yeah, that's how it works.
But that's what the A button does.
I like that they went to Willowwood, specifically the Pocket Tales iteration of Conker's world. Or I like the idea too that they might have seen some of the Bad Fur Day elements too. Maybe Donkey had a drink at the Cock and Plucker, and they're just so much like conjecture that could be made from this one little blurb. I love it. I love it so much. Conker's voice in the game, compared to what it would become famously in Bad Fur Day. How do you best describe Conker's voice? Kind of cockney in this?
Sugar fiend is how I would describe it. That's the read of Conker's character I always got in this game based on his voice. Like just a child who is just completely like strung out on sugar.
Before he turned to booze and drugs, it was the pixie sticks, man.
Yeah, he's very susceptible to vices.
He's overtly British here. Like his accent is much more British than it is in Bad Fur Day. Granted, it's obviously British in Bad Fur Day Forward, but I know it's always been said that on DK Vine that Chris Seaver was trying to do an American accent, but doing it poorly, and that's what Conker's voice is, kind of. But here, it's English. It's got an English bend to it.
It's so pitched up that you can't really detect it very much, but it's...
Yeah. But...
I mean, I remember Conker's voice in this game, not for talking, but for, like, mad cackling.
Yeah. I don't know. I can stretch my imagination and think this voice became the Bad Fur Day voice. I mean, I can take Donkey Kong's voice and reconcile the Grant Kirkhope one with the Scooby-Doo one we've got currently. Like, to me, like, they're the same guy, so with Conker, it's not much of a problem at all. Whatever, you know. He matured into his famous Bad Fur Day voice. It's fine. Alright, let's get into the Unlockable 2. Drumstick. He's a heavyweight, I guess, but I don't really know his stats because the instruction manual doesn't give it. He is, according to the game lore, the best racer on the island, although there is one who is better, but you know, he'll be next. Like I said, one of the 2 unlockable characters. In the backstory, he went to face Wizpig alone because he was the best racer, and he disappeared, and nobody knows what happened to Drumstick. Wizpig could have slit Drumstick's throat and made him into the Colonel's rotisserie bucket meal or whatever the hell KFC serves. I don't know. I've never eaten KFC. But you know what I mean. Drumstick's fate could have been very, very bleak.
His name is Drumstick. That does not lend itself to good implications.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And again, not to plug the Facebook page yet again, but I did bring this up on the Facebook page a couple weeks back, and I hypothesized that one of the reasons so many characters in the Rare Archipelago have these names, like Drumstick or Crispy Bacon, is it's kind of reappropriating these really grim ideas and notions and kind of claiming it for their own and saying, no, you don't get to say I'm food. My name's Drumstick, and that's a proud name, you know, stuff like that. But he got turned into a frog, actually. So this is weird, and it's kind of cool. So there are these frogs hopping around in Taj's meadow down near by the moat or the water or the pond or whatever in Taj's meadow in the overworld. And you can run over these frogs and they do the cartoon flattening, you know, kind of thing. And then I think they reinflate over time, or maybe they just disappear. Like maybe you outright murder these frogs when you run over them. I kind of forget. But I try not to run. They pop back up?
Yeah.
I tried to refrain from running over them because I did not want to murder any frogs. But when you get
I did it repeatedly because I'm a sociopath and the noise was funny.
Clearly, Cameron, you had issues as a child.
But you're the one who gleefully commits shark murder in Sea of Thieves now, so we're even.
Hey, NDA, buddy. We can't mention that. I don't do anything with sharks in Sea of Thieves. I love the sharks in Sea of Thieves.
You murdered sharks at E3. That's public knowledge.
Oh, yeah. That's not all I murdered at E3. And they'll never catch me. So, all I can say is I got some nice skin lamps. Nick Pearl, you better watch your ass. So, got 4 gold trophies in the tournament races. And I looked this up because I honestly didn't remember. I think it's 39 gold balloons according to the internet. And then one of the frogs in Taj's meadow will suddenly develop a red comb on their head, the chicken hair, you know? And apparently this is supposed to represent Wizpig's hold on the spell weakening after he's like suffered some, I guess, psychological setbacks, because oh no, we one of these racers is really proving themselves. I'm a little bit worried. Whoops, my spell on the chicken man kind of waned. The frog is showing his true colors. So if you run it over with a cart, I think it has to be a cart. I don't think you can do it with the hovercraft or plane even. But I've only ever tried it with a cart.
It's just easier with the car.
It's easier, yeah. You squash it, and then Drumstick will ascend into the sky as of Jesus Christ post-resurrection. After the 40 days on Earth. Bible, look it up. So, this is Drumstick. Drumstick ascends, and then he's on the character select screen, and you can pick him. And Drumstick isn't as good as he's made out to be. He's kind of mediocre, in my opinion, as far as a racer goes. Character-wise, he's fine. He's a chicken in denim.
I think
denim chicken.
Just never really played as him much in Diddy Kong Racing, because I think it was... You unlock him so late in the game that he's not really endeared to me like the rest of the cast is.
Right, by then you've already got your main character pretty much, your go-to racer, so it's like, oh, okay, great, I've unlocked him. Thanks. No, but I like that you unlock him in such a way that it's not just, oh, you've completed so many races. Here's this guy, like you do in modern Mario Kart games.
I just like that you actively have to run over a frog to unlock him.
Yeah, and the game doesn't spell it out for you. It's basically like you just have to like notice something unusual down by the pond, and then you have to like try to run over it. Like it's a cool level of you've got to pay attention. You can't just play this game half asleep.
And
I like it.
You can use the cheat menu to turn Drumstick off and then run him over again to unlock him again.
Yeah, so if you are a sociopath like Cameron, just have at it as many times as you want. You can keep slaughtering these animals and they keep bouncing right back. So TT. Now, TT is the last unlockable character in the game, but he is there from the beginning. He is the caretaker of the racetracks. He's a stopwatch. He's an anthropomorphic stopwatch. He also keeps track of your totals. You can talk to him in the lobbies of each world. And he's also the announcer during the races. He has some infamous quotes. Go for it! No, wrong way! Are two of the favorites. We even had a DK Vine 4 member. No, wrong way. One of my favorite usernames of all time.
He's also, because of the forum, like, inseparably linked with Alistair Craig for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you can also race against his ghost in time trial mode. And if you beat all of his times, I think you have to set a record in one on each track, and then after you set a record, you can then try to beat TT's time, right?
Yeah, I think there's like a minimum time you have to beat that's like much more lenient, and then you can face him.
Right, it's basically just getting yourself on the board, and then now try to beat my time. And you beat all of his times and he'll be playable, but not so fast, because this is one of the hardest damn things I've ever had to do in a video game. Like, this was the first time in the Donkey Kong universe. Yeah, I mean, initially playing the Donkey Kong Country games, those were the first games I played where I didn't just want to cheat my way through. And so that was difficult. It was like really cutting my teeth on those games. But unlocking TT was the first time I really wondered, can I actually do this? This seems pretty hard. It was brutal, especially since they were marketing this game to like little kids and families. This is some like next level shit right here.
It took me years upon years before I actually managed to unlock him, and I don't know about you, but the longest holdup for me, like I found TT like not easy, but relatively easier to beat in the racetracks that required you to use a plane or a hovercraft. I always had the most trouble with the car, and I think part of that is because I hadn't completely wrapped my head around until very, very late on the trick involving the zippers, where you let off the gas, and then right as the rainbow smoke begins to disappear, you hit the accelerator again. And I would always jump the gun. Like, I knew how to get the green flame, but I wouldn't tell myself to keep letting off the gas. And once I figured out to do that, he was much easier to beat, relatively, again.
Yeah, I beat him in a couple months after the game came out, and it was funny because I was like holding off beating Wizpig. Like, I had to do this in the right order, so I before I actually finished the game for real, I had to unlock TT. So, but I did it like early '98. So, I must have figured out the zipper trick, or if I didn't like explicitly figure it out, I at least instinctively knew it on some base level that I started doing it. Because I obviously got to the point where I beat
You
him.
also may have just crashed into less things than I did.
Well, speaking of crash, the hardest part for me in beating TT was when my cartridge mysteriously wiped my time trial data. So, for whatever reason, my game cartridge like bugged out, and like I still had my saved data except for my time trial times, and so I had to beat all these time trial times again.
Ooh.
And I was always so worried my game was just going to wipe them at some point. Like, what was wrong with the game? And I don't know what I did or what triggered it. It only happened once. But that's something that kind of scarred me. And I remember one time then, several months later, when I was playing Banjo-Kazooie, I turned on my game, and I went to the file menu, and it showed file 2, my game data, had been wiped. The file was empty, out of nowhere. And I was like, what? And I turned off the game in panic, and I turned it back on, and then I went back, and it was there. So, like, I don't know what was going on at Rare at this time, but they really like to fuck with me with my game data.
You sure that Chupacabra didn't try to drink from your cartridge?
Yeah, I should have gone with file 3, apparently. All right, well, let's get into this, because this is something I've never really talked about. The weird paradox of there being 2 TTs after you unlock him. So, let's assume you do play as TT. You're driving around as TT. You're going to see TT in the lobby as TT.
And you don't really have the hologram excuse on this one, do you? Because you actually physically interact and talk with him.
I don't know. I don't know if there's just a second TT. Because obviously, like, the guy who's walking around in the lobby and doing the announcing, he's the guy you play as. But if you're playing as him, who is this other TT? Who is this charlatan running around saying he's TT?
I mean, he is a watch. Maybe he's, like, can just casually time travel.
Or, you know, maybe there's more than one. Maybe there is more than one TT. Maybe, I don't know, a game like Sea of Thieves can help explain this in the future. Let's say if TT were, I don't know, in Sea of Thieves, hashtag TT in Sea of Thieves. Maybe if he was like an item in Sea of Thieves.
It's so hard to look directly into the camera on a podcast.
I know. I'm Jim Halperting the hell out of this right now, but I don't think anybody's getting it. I don't think people got my middle finger through the microphone either, but rest assured, we're doing it. All right, Cameron, before we move on, I want to know, did you main as a racer? Like, was there a character you played as more than any other, or exclusively as?
I don't know about in my first run through the game, but on subsequent playthroughs, it's definitely been Banjo.
Really?
I think I've done at least one run of the game entirely as Banjo?
Just because you like the way he handled? If he handled similarly to Donkey Kong, or...
I think one reason is just it's the novelty of it being Banjo, and I do kind of like his handling. It's a little bit tricky to get used to, but it's not to the extent of Crunch where I'm sliding all over the place. I make liberal use of that. The trick Taj teaches you like midway through the game where you hold down B, A, and R at the same time.
Yeah.
But he's kind of like he's a rewarding challenge, I think, is part of why I like him.
Well, that's the way I feel about Donkey Kong and Mario Kart. Also because I like Donkey Kong more than any other characters, unless Diddy is in the game, or Funky, so...
and if you run into something because you screw up, at least it makes a funny noise.
Right. But no, in Diddy Kong Racing, I picked Diddy. And now, granted, Diddy is my favorite video game character of all time. So there was that. It's funny because, you know, I always pick the Kongs in Mario Kart. In Diddy Kong Racing, I picked Diddy, essentially the Mario of the cast. Even though these are all homegrown, rare Donkey Kong Universe characters, I could have picked any of these characters and been satisfied. I still picked Diddy. And I exclusively beat this game as Diddy. Like, in multiplayer mode, I would, like, mess around with the other characters. But in the adventure mode, I would only play as Diddy. Like, Diddy was who I picked. In the, when you can name the file, I named it DID. Did. Like, Diddy was it. I would not pick anybody else. It's funny the weird like way my brain works, because again, like, I love all these characters. These are all rare DKU characters. I would play the hell out of any of these characters if they appeared in a Mario Kart game. I had to play as Diddy here. He was my boy. He was my man. Even though he was the bland vanilla Mario of the game, he was the one I picked. He was the one I unlocked TT with. Even though he was probably, you know, not best suited to do it. I did.
Oh no, for TT I probably used like Tip Top or somebody. Or
most people I think use Tip Top or somebody. Yeah. But no, I had to do it as Diddy. And that's a pathology I would stick with, even with games like Banjo Pilot. The only thing Banjo Pilot, I did break my rule because in like the one game mode at the end, and forgive me, I forget, but you basically have to use bottles, or else it's impossible. Like, they literally make it impossible.
The Jinjo challenge, or whatever it's
Yes,
called.
the Jinjo challenge. Yeah, that's unlocked after you unlock bottles.
That mode is definitely... the difficulty is designed, I think, for you to be using bottles.
Right, and that's the only time I've really encountered a game where they don't give you the choice. And I had to really do a lot of soul searching when I was slush funding that to say it's okay, you don't have to play as the same character throughout. In that game, I was playing as Banjo. Because I don't know, I'm weird, but yeah, so I had to pick bottles just for the Jinjo mode. All right, lest we forget, there is another character there from the beginning. He's Taj. He is the one you visit in his meadow in the overworld to switch out your vehicle, cart, plane, hovercraft. He's the one who gives you golden balloons for finishing a race. And you also have to race against him 3 times around Timbers Island in a cart, a plane, and a hovercraft throughout the course of the adventure. I love Taj. Taj is basically the saint of the Donkey Kong universe. You know, one of our fan explanations is Taj is the reason so many of these anthropomorphic animals are created. He was a lonely, gentle soul who wanted a forest full of friends. And so all of these characters, these squirrels and mice and turtles who can talk, they all came from Timbers Island originally, and then spread out across the rare archipelago. Taj is the reason. Taj also created the googly eyes from ukulele fame that can attach themselves to inanimate objects and are the reason so many things that shouldn't be alive are alive in the Donkey Kong universe.
Are we sure he's a good guy?
Yeah, a little dubious, I guess, but his heart is in the right place. I don't know about his accent, but I guess in 1997 it seemed a lot more innocent. This was before there were all these think pieces online about, is Apu an offensive character in The Simpsons? You know, he's a genie. Well, he's a genie. He's supposed to be of Indian descent. They could have kept it more vaguely Middle Eastern. They named him after the fucking Taj Mahal, I assume. I don't really have a problem with him having an Indian accent, but I'm probably the wrong person to ask if it's offensive or not, so I'll just refrain from really delving into this point. I will say, though, that the voice they gave him in Diddy Kong Racing DS sucked. Like, there are ways to lessen how offensive the voice may or may not have been without completely gutting it. Perhaps. I don't know. Again, wrong person to ask. But Taj, on the whole, is fantastic. I love him. He was going to reappear in Donkey Kong Racing, which was great. And, of course, the perennial question was it really okay for him to ride Ellie or a similar elephant? Or is that just weird? And I love that Donkey Kong Racing would have raised those questions. So, unfortunately, Taj cannot appear in a Donkey Kong game moving forward because he is owned by Rare, unless they, strike some sort of bargain. St. Phil Spencer, pals it around with Reggie.
Hashtag Taj in Minecraft.
But Taj can still appear in a Rare game, so who's to say? Maybe his lamp will appear in Sea of Thieves. So let's get into the items and racing mechanics of DKR real quick. I think we'll have less to say here than we had to say about the characters. Karts, planes, hovercrafts. Karts versus planes. Planes versus hovercraft. Hovercraft versus hovercraft, etc., etc., etc. The karts are a lot more actual kart-shaped than they are in Mario Kart 64. At the very least, they are the kind of karts you would see if you went to a go-kart track in 1997. From my experience, they were like little cars, basically.
They're also a shockingly hard shape to draw.
I don't know much to say about the karts. They control pretty similarly to the karts in Mario Kart 64.
I like the red tires. And it's like a really distinctive thing I remember about Diddy Kong Racing.
Hovercrafts, they're the least fun vehicle in the game. The advantage of the hovercraft is you don't get held up by like water on the track. You can just like sail right over it. But the tracks where you have to use hovercraft are typically like just water tracks, and it's always a little bit harder to control. And I don't know, like in comparison to the planes, the hovercrafts were just kind of there.
They're
Nintendo
fun, but it's not the allure of the plane and the cart isn't quite the same.
Right. And it's funny how Nintendo was so like assured in the promotional materials that kids are gonna love hovercraft. They really pushed hovercrafts even over planes. When you go back and watch the Diddy Kong Racing VHS tape that they were sent out to gamers, it's funny how they would always seem to push the hovercraft ever so slightly above planes. It's just like, no, you can fly planes in the game. Why wouldn't you push that? That is catnip to a kid. The plane control, great. I love the planes. My favorite tracks in this game are probably plane-based. And it really helps that this is a 3D game, and it's not like Banjo Pilot, where the planes make no sense. The planes actually serve a purpose here, and really create for some exciting racing. That's all I have to say about the planes, or the hovercraft, or the karts, or the karts versus planes, or the hovercraft versus planes, or the planes versus hovercrafts, or the karts versus karts, or the karts... I hate that video so goddamn much.
That one... It's funny you reference that, because that may be like the one segment in that video that was kind of endearing to me. But that's just it. It's... Yeah. We went over it.
Watch it on our YouTube channel. It's up there.
At your own risk.
It's up there. Yeah. So the items are brilliant in this game. In comparison to the randomized chaos of Mario Kart. Not even randomized. If you're sucking in Mario Kart, you're going to get some pretty powerful items that will usually not do enough to get you back up to the front of the pack, but they will spoil everyone else's day. Items in Diddy Kong Racing have strategy behind them, and that involves a lot of thinking while you're racing and a lot of different methods you can use to get ahead.
There is a lot of long game with Diddy Kong Racing's items.
Look, Diddy Kong Racing is a game that is about, again, strategy and racing skill. And the items actually play a part in that. They do not derail that like in Mario Kart. And it especially helps that the computer-controlled racers do not cheat. They do not get any magical speed boost in this game where they're just suddenly ahead. The racers in this game actually play fairly. It's remarkable. It is remarkable. And
I can't comment on exactly how it works, but I think this also created the conception when I was a kid, and I think like I wasn't alone in this with other kids I talked to. I think as a result of Diddy Kong Racing's rubber banding being a little bit more relaxed than Mario Kart, you very quickly run into situations where, like I'd say very early on in the game, the racers around you suddenly seem a lot more competent than you do. And I think it's because the rubber banding, they can't catch up to you as easily, but you aren't given any easy passes catching up to them either.
Right. Yeah, and it's something that I didn't even realize was broken in Mario Kart 64 until I played Diddy Kong Racing. And it took me a couple laps, not a couple laps, couple races to fully realize it, but it was still in the first world. I think it was around the third track in the game, Jungle Falls, where I said to myself, something is off. What is it? And I realized the racers are not catching up to me. The other characters are not catching up to me like they always would in Mario Kart. Either I've gotten really good at this genre in the last several months, or they were cheating in Mario Kart.
See, you know what my first major realization was when I played Jungle Falls?
What's that?
I just drove straight into this lake, and there's nobody coming to fish me out.
Yeah, no Lakitu. We'll save that for talking about the actual tracks. But yeah, the strategy and skill and fairness. That's Diddy Kong Racing. And you can make the argument that, well, that's not really good for newbies, and that doesn't keep it as exciting for those who are skilled at it. Screw it. It's honest, it's fair, it's the way it should be. It's upfront, and it's not creating any artificial cheating that makes no sense in universe, other than everybody else is just so much better than you. Suck it up, chowderhead. This I loved Mario Kart 64, and I still love Mario Kart 64. But Cameron, Diddy Kong Racing really soured me on Mario Kart 64 very quickly. And really, the thing that saved Mario Kart 64's reputation for me was how brutal Double Dash doubled down on Mario Kart 64's inanity with the cheating and with the unbalanced items. And so that kind of saved Mario Kart 64's reputation. But Diddy Kong Racing, it was like a revelation I didn't even realize I needed to have. And let's talk about the item system and the upgrading system. So you find items in balloons on the track. And in the balloon, and I love that balloons are still such an important part in this game. They play such an important role in Donkey Kong as far as the lives go, that I like that that carries forward into this game. Even though that was there before Diddy was there, it's still one of those things that kind of just makes it feel like it was always meant to be. So red balloons on the track. If you find a red balloon, you know missiles are inside. You run over one red balloon. So again, you don't have randomized item roulettes like you do in Mario Kart. You know what you're going to get. So you run over one red balloon, you know you're going to get one basic missile, which is the equivalent in Mario Kart to a green shell. You've got to aim it perfectly, but you can hit a racer in front of you.
Worth pointing out, though, these do not ricochet like green shells. You waste this, you've wasted it.
They just explode. But I do love how much more violent the implication is. You're not just shooting a shell of a turtle at somebody. You're shooting a missile at them. Like, yeah, it's cartoony and it's ridiculous, but it just seems that much more brutal. So you run over, let's say you run over one red balloon, and you still have this missile, and you do not use it, and you see another red balloon on the track. You run over that. You've just upgraded to a homing missile, which is the equivalent in Mario Kart of a red shell.
Probably my most used item in the entire game.
Yeah, so this is the thing here. This is a very effective weapon, and I think it has less failure rates than a red shell does in Mario Kart, because the red shell would fail if you, it could barely make it around a corner in Mario Kart. If it was a tight corner, it would just hit
something else that also helps in Diddy Kong Racing is you get a targeting reticle with this item.
Yes. So let's say you're saving the homing missile and you see another red balloon and you're like, I'm gonna upgrade again. You can upgrade a second time. There are 3 iterations of each item. The third iteration of the missile, you get 10 basic missiles. Now, this might sound appealing, and in certain situations, this is very effective if you need to really clear the crowd in front of you. But Cameron, more often than not, I would just want to
kind of feels like a downgrade, and this is probably the only item in the entire game that's like this. So much so that the DS version played around with this and made the homing missile the third level upgrade. And I think you get maybe 4, 5, or 6 missiles in Diddy Kong Racing DS. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Well, here's why I like the strategy, though, because let's say you're having a good lap, you're having a good race, and you're at the head of the pack. You're not going to want to upgrade to the 10 missiles. You're going to want to keep that homing missile at the ready in case that son of a bitch conquer behind you gets some funny ideas and somehow gets ahead. You're going to keep that homing missile at the ready. And you're not going to want to have 10 missiles, because then you're not going to have the aiming. You're not going to be able to lock on to them. The chances are you might not be able to hit them. However, if you're in the middle to the back of the pack and you're having trouble, yeah, go ahead and upgrade, because you need to blast some bastards away. And that's what I'm talking about when I say strategy, because there is no easy answer. You have to assess the situation you're in, or the situation you think you're going to be, and plan ahead. And the game allows you to do that.
I'd say the most fun I have with the 10 missiles is just firing them all at once and watching your character freak out about it.
So blue balloons give you the speed boost, the equivalent to the mushroom in Mario Kart. 1 gives you a red burst, which is basic. 2 gives you a blue burst, which is stronger. And 3 gives you a purple burst, which is the strongest. This is pretty run-of-the-mill. There's no reason you wouldn't want to have the purple unless you need to get ahead then and there. So this is just kind of, will this boost benefit me more in the short term, or should I hold out for the long term? Usually I went with the short term, I think.
I think in most cases I usually went for, in theory I wanted to wait until level 3. In practice I probably waited until level 2.
Yeah.
And you wanted to wait for level 3 because of the really satisfying rocket takeoff sound effect you got.
Level 3 was pretty strong. And granted, you usually wanted to be on a straightaway for that.
You could make it even stronger using the same trick with the zippers, like letting off the gas.
Yes. Yeah, that's an important note. These are essentially the equivalent to zippers, which is what Diddy Kong Racing called the speed or dash panels on the track. They gave them this nice term, zippers, which is so memorable and just sounds so fun to say, zipper, that I really wish more kart racing games, including you, Banjo Pilot, would have continued to adopt the term. Yellow balloons are the shield. So this is kind of a Diddy Kong Racing centric idea that utilizes different ideas from Mario Kart and goes in its own direction. So one yellow balloon gives you the basic shield, which creates this kind of electrical barrier around your character. This is the closest equivalent to this is kind of the shell guard from Mario Kart, although if somebody runs into you, this version doesn't do anything. But it's essentially
other racing games have similar items like this, but not Mario Kart itself.
Right. I'm obviously just comparing this to Mario Kart. My knowledge of other racing games, sans Sonic and Sega All-Stars, is honestly pretty limited. But you get 2 yellow balloons, you get the stronger shield, which just lasts a little bit longer. Just like fruit striped gum should if we lived in a just and fair world, which we don't, which is fine. It's fine. And then 3 yellow balloons gives you the strongest shield, and this will not only last longer, but it will also spin out your opponents should they touch you. So this is kind of the equivalent to the star item from Mario Kart, right? Like,
yeah.
or the green shell, like in practice, but
I'd say as much as you have an equivalent for the star, this is it. It's not right, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but
exactly, yeah. But I like the effect of the shield, and I like that the basic shield has like this radioactive symbol. So it's like, what exactly are they using to generate this, and is it dangerous? Are we going to have the herring tail of like Banjo finding out he has blood cancer? Like in 20 years or 25 years, when yeah, you shouldn't have used those shields from Timbers Island. Yeah, you irradiated your blood, Banjo.
He didn't even get spider powers.
Single tear comes down. Yeah, and then he goes to. Too bad his doctor is mumbo jumbo. He's not getting. He's not beating that. So. What else we got? We got the green balloons, the droppers. So again, this combines different ideas from Mario Kart with its own direction. One green balloon gives you an oil spill, which is the equivalent to the banana in Mario Kart. Obviously, bananas in this game are the equivalent to coins in Super Mario Kart and later Mario Karts. But no, you get oil spills in this game. Very RC Pro-Am. You can see the Pro-Am 64 heritage of this game with the oil spill. And the missiles, for that matter. So 2 green balloons gives you a mine, which
a very odd looking mine. It always looked to me like a burr, like from off of a plant. It doesn't really.
I think it's like it's kind of like they had to have a mine that could both be on a track, float on the water, or just hang in the air, depending on which vehicle you're using. So I think they just came up with this notion of kind of a, like you said, a burr. Like, it can float, it will stick, whatever. I like it though. It's memorable, And this was the sort of fake item block from Mario Kart 64. The only thing is you couldn't disguise it as like among the other balloons. It was apparent what this was, but you put it in the right location, it was hard to avoid. 3, though, was the snare bubble. So it was a bubble that characters could get stuck in, and then they couldn't move. They would just kind of... It would slow them down, and it would halt their momentum. So really frustrating, but I never really saw much use to upgrade to it. I would usually be satisfied with the oil slick, honestly.
Yeah, I think the bubble takes a lot too much build up, and I think it's a larger obstacle, which means like if you can get it in a choke point, it's really to your advantage. But you can also see it coming a lot more than you do the oil slick, and the oil slick is often enough for me.
Right, exactly. Although Bubbler the boss loved him some bubbles. Too bad there wasn't a Miney or a... Too bad Tricky didn't like secrete oil, secrete his dead brethren. I wonder if that was ever upsetting. Like, we've talked about the existential weirdness of Koopas using Koopa shells in Mario Kart. But would Tricky ever see, like, the oil spill and be like, how dare you?
And it was like...
I knew him.
I'd say that's kind of like... Witchy World having burgers in Banjo-Tooie when Bovina is also in the game, but,
yeah.
Let's face it, I don't think those burgers have any actual meat in them. At least not cow meat.
Yeah, maybe the reason Tricky was so surly and cheated was he was like... He saw Diddy using that oil spill, and he was like, that was Albert Murkowski. He was a damn good man.
I think those silver coins were reparations.
Finally, there were rainbow balloons, which the game called special balloons. They called the item special. They were magnets. They were all just fucking magnets.
And they tended to be... This was the weird... We already talked about how neither of us really cared much for the magnet items. The game itself sure seems to care for them a lot, because of all the item balloons, these would tend to be put in the out-of-the-way areas.
Yeah, and... I mean, I never found much use for the magnet in my own racing strategy. Maybe there were gamers out there who, like, crushed Diddy Kong Racing by using the magnet. Maybe I just never developed the proper use for them. But I mean, again, how do they work, Cameron? How do they work? Nobody can answer that for me. I've asked many the insane clown, and they still can't tell me. So, rainbow balloons, the special items, just fucking magnets, okay? Calm your tits, Diddy Kong Racing. They're just magnets. One gives you a magnet, and that will pull yourself up ever so slightly to the racer directly ahead of you. It's a cool concept, and I really like this concept. 2 gives you a stronger magnet, stronger pull. I guess you can pull from a greater distance, or maybe you get up further. It's been a while, and like you said, we didn't really use the magnet all that much. But so I don't really recall exactly the barometers of the strength of the magnet. But 3 gave you the reverse magnet, which basically would pull the racer in front of you back to your level. And that never felt as grand to me as getting further up. Because it's like, you're gonna have to do more work. Like, yeah, you've kind of slowed down this person ahead of you, but you're still gonna have to drive that distance. It doesn't really seem like that much of an incremental betterment from the other magnets. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm not thinking in the proper terms of those champions of Diddy Kong Racing who knew how to use magnets properly. I certainly wasn't one of them. And it's probably good, too, that Diddy did not have an email address or did not have a smartphone back in 97, because they would have ruined their smartphones with all these magnets. Hauling these magnets in their carts, they would have wiped their smartphones clean. It would have been disastrous.
I feel like TT would really, really not appreciate this item.
Maybe that's why Tosh had to bring in a second TT after TT became a racer, because he would continually forget all of the item in the totals and status of the racers. He would just wipe his memory clean. It's like, gotta bring in another stopwatch from the Sea of Thieves. Hashtag TT and Sea of Thieves. So power sliding was still in effect for the carts. But like I said, the computer racers did not cheat. Now, I've complained about Mario Kart 64 in comparison to Diddy Kong Racing, but I think really looking at the fact of the matter, Mario Kart 64 being so unfair and having cut my teeth then on Mario Kart 64 made me way better at Diddy Kong Racing than I would have been had I not played Mario Kart 64 first.
Oh, agreed.
So,
I mean, I talked about the difficulty I had with Diddy Kong Racing. I can just imagine how that would be magnified if I'd never driven a vehicle in a 3D space before.
Or you might even say magnified.
Why would I say that?
Oh. I ruined the episode. Alright, you know what? It's been a while since I pulled this card. This shameful, duplicitous card. But I'm going to pull it out of my pants like I'm Bumper. I know we said this was going to be a 2-part Spotlight episode, but we're nearing 3 hours. And we've still got a lot of content to get
I was
to.
worried I would have to make a liar out of you. I've got to go.
Cameron was just going to kill himself, much like he likes to kill frogs. No, we've got to make this a 3-parter. I'm really sorry. We haven't pulled this since the DKC2 Spotlight series.
Let's not call it part 2. Let's call it part 2, part 2.
Let's call it part 2, Adventure 2, DS. But on that note, next time we'll get to the actual worlds, the racetracks. We'll get to the bosses. Oh, those boss characters. So much has been gotten out of those boss characters. Hi, Tricky. And WizPig, the ending, Adventure 2. We'll get to your calls, and we'll get to the legacy. The legacy of Diddy Kong Racing. Yes, I'm looking forward to that. Are you, Cameron? Are you looking forward to next week now that you know you have to be on the show next week?
Yeah, looking forward to that more than I
yes.
was the idea of staying up until 5 in the morning.
Oh, it would have been to at least 6. But thankfully, I don't know how to pace myself. So, once again, to be continued!
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.